yesterday for the ordinance that gives the affordable housing proposal first priority over all other proposals. Council President Ruth C. Louis-Jean proposed the ordinance, saying it addresses the severe and ongoing housing affordability crisis in Boston. And the Friends of Cape Cod National Seashore are asking users of the park for their help during the federal shutdown. Friends President David Bernstein says the public can help by picking up litter when they walk. He says trash was a problem during the previous shutdown.
One of the big problems last time was trash containers were overflowing, and therefore trash was being blown places. So I just asked people if they consider having a large garbage bag, and they drive into a parking lot and see that happening. They fill the trash bag as they can and bring it to their local transfer station.
The Salt Pond Visitor Center is closed, but restrooms nearby are open. Bernstein says some facilities on seashore property are still operating, including the Highland Links Golf Course and Payomet Performing Arts Center. In sports, the Bruins have their home opener tonight against the Blackhawks. Thursday night football, the Eagles at the Giants. And in the forecast, sunny and cool today, high mid to upper 50s. There's a frost warning overnight tonight. Better get those plants inside. Lows in the 30s. We're at 50 degrees right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Browdy, I am Marjorie, and you're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with great players from Boston Baroque. Our media maven, Sue O'Connell, will also be with us. And a programming note, Jim, the mayor of Boston, Michelle, will be with us from noon to 1 at the Boston Public Library on the 28th of October. Good morning.
To me, you mean?
Yes.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Jim.
So 2 days after the 2-year anniversary of Hamas's brutal October 7th attacks, we have murmurs, as you know, of a new peace deal proposed by Donald Trump between Israel and Hamas. There's so much we still don't know about what's included in the final plan. We'll tell you in a minute what we do know and what we don't. And like every so-called deal so far, this thing could fall apart tomorrow. Let's hope it does not. But in an era where we agree on pretty much nothing, it's safe to say everybody wants to see an end to this war and the killings. So we're opening today's show as a sort of checkup on how you're feeling in this moment of time. 877-301-8970. Are you hopeful that this proposal could actually happen? Cynical from years of broken promises and bad faith negotiations? Are you like Marjorie, praying for a peace while also getting ready to toss your toaster in the bathtub at the idea of Trump winning a Nobel Peace Prize? By the way, I guess he could win it as early as Friday, potentially.
He could.
2 days. Was that tomorrow? Yes, it is tomorrow.
Yes, it is.
And considering the polling,
the toaster could be in the tub tomorrow, Jim.
Where something like 60% of Americans have a negative view of the Israeli government. That's up 20 points from where it was 3 years ago. 45% of Americans say the Israelis have committed genocide. And by the way, the number among American Jews is practically the same, 40%. As we celebrate the idea that peace may be close, how much damage has Netanyahu done to his country's status on the world stage? It's all on the table, 877-301-8970. I mean, I know this is hard for you and for a lot of people. If this happens, it is Trump's proposal to do it. If you read Tom Friedman, it couldn't have been proposed by the Israelis. It had to be proposed by an outsider. Mm-hmm. The outsider was Trump. And if it gets to the desired end, it is huge, and he does deserve credit for this.
Well, first of all, obviously, everybody is rooting for this to work because the suffering of these hostages, the people who lost their families in the October 7th attack by Hamas, and, of course, the suffering in Gaza. I mean, the whole world would be happy if this tentative peace deal can last and the ceasefire can last. But I'm going to give you a quiz, Jim. Yeah. You always give me quizzes. I'm going to give you some names.
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela.
I know he is.
Desmond Tutu.
Yep.
Elie Wiesel survived the concentration camps. Elie Wiesel survived the concentration camps in Germany. Mother Teresa. Martin Luther King Jr. Donald Trump.
their Nobel Peace Prize. You left out Maria Ressa, who was on our studio a few months ago.
We've actually interviewed a Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Yeah.
We actually interviewed a guy who may win the Nobel Peace Prize winner back in 2015 before he became the president. It was at 2016 anyway, before he became the president of the United States. But
we interviewed another Nobel Peace Prize winner a few years ago, Bernie Lown, the late Bernie Lown,
that's right.
the great doctor for Physicians Against Nuclear War, I think it was called.
So as the White House is saying, the president has no interest in winning the Nobel Prize, even though he's talked about it almost nonstop since he got into office. It really ticks him off that Barack Obama won the Nobel Prize, and Obama probably should not have won the Nobel Prize.
By the way, you should finish that thought. But they have said that it would be an insult to our country if Donald Trump does not win the Nobel Prize.
Who said that, Jim?
One of their leaders.
One of the people that wants to curry favor with the president.
That was actually Donald Trump.
And you know what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen? He's going to win.
Well, let me tell you, there's a cabinet meeting in about 10 minutes, I think, to talk about the deal. And we know how sycophantic those meetings can be. How long do you think it is before someone says, sir, I know you don't care about awards and prizes. However, we all agree the Nobel Prize should be yours.
That's right. And they're all going to say it. They're all going to say it. And by the way, you're supposed to have chosen the short list by January 31st. Yeah. And the people on the short list that are already there are people that Trump has got his long knives out after.
Like who?
Well, like Global Press Freedom, they're on the short list right now to win the Nobel Prize. So is the International Criminal Court, the one that Trump placed sanctions against in February because of its going after Israeli leaders. So the short list is already there with people who probably are deserving, but it is called the non-campaign campaign by Trump, who keeps denying he's campaigning. And he really, as he says himself, it isn't about me, says Trump.
It's about his country.
It's about the United States of America.
We also want to talk, despite Marjorie wanted to talk about the Nobel Prize, we also want to talk about what is, at least I hope, a very positive day in the lives of Israelis and Palestinians who have seen somewhere in the neighborhood of 60,000 of their neighbors, sisters, and brothers killed. Here, let me tell you what we do know before we get to your calls at 877-301-8970. The preliminary part of this thing, there is a ceasefire. There will be the release of Israeli captives, hostages, alive and dead. I think they say 28 potentially alive. I'm not sure.
I think 20 have probably passed away, and 28 are still
Palestinian prisoners
held.
Will be released, and obviously aid will begin to flow as it should have months ago into Gaza. The issues that are unresolved, at least some of them, is the timing and extent of the Israeli withdrawal, the makeup of the post-war administration there. We know about the Board of Peace, whatever that's going to do, that Trump is heading.
Trump is the chairman.
The fate of Hamas. So there are a lot of questions and a lot of ways this could fall apart. Let's hope it does not. 877-301-8970. I'll say again, we were, I guess, being light around Nobel Prize issues. Trump did this. If this sticks, Trump did this, and that really matters. It's a huge and hugely important deal. Let's start with Rob.
No, it does. He does. I mean, it pains me to say it, but if it sticks, obviously he deserves enormous credit for this. The Nobel Prize, though, it would just be really tough to take. But the White House has responded to questions about whether he's lobbying to get the Nobel Prize. And White House spokesperson said...
Excuse me, did all the phones just crash? Is that what just happened? There were 5 calls, they're all gone. Okay, good.
We'll have to go to the text.
All right, 877-301-8970. If we just hung up on you, which we didn't intend to do, please call again, and we'll do our best to not hang up on you this time.
Okay, this is the White House spokesperson, Anna Kelly. While the president deserves the Nobel Peace Prize many times over, he does not care about recognition.
Can I tell you something on a serious note? Henry Kissinger got the Nobel Peace Prize.
He shouldn't have gotten
because
either.
of Vietnam. And he was also, a lot of people were critical of that, saying because of his involvement in the brutal bombing of Cambodia. So the point being, there have been people who had done some pretty horrible things elsewhere in their careers who were recognized for one really important behavior, like ending the war in Vietnam,
I don't know.
ceasefire there.
The list I just read to you, I mean, people could take issue with Yasser Arafat. I suppose you said.
Well, how about Henry Kissinger? You haven't commented on that.
I just said he probably shouldn't have got it. But the vast majority of these people are people that did deserve it. Like
Trump hasn't started wars, by the way. He is exaggerated. Be kind about the wars that he is personally responsible for resolving.
He has claimed to have solved 7 wars, and when you look at the details, and we've got them right in front of us, the only one he can take any claim for is Israel and Iran. That's basically it.
Let's see if people are back on the line. Rob and Dover, we're crossing our fingers. Welcome back. Hi.
Hi, thanks.
Great.
Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I've been listening to, so as full disclosure, I have family in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I've been many times. I am very hopeful that this is going to last and that there can be a path forward for two peoples to have two states. That said, too, bad people can do good things and good people can do bad things.
Yes, they can.
And I think that in this day and age, we are constantly putting people in either good or bad buckets, people in good or bad buckets. I didn't vote for Trump, probably won't ever vote for Trump, but I think in this particular instance, he was the only one that every side would listen to in this particular circumstance, for better or for worse. And I think he deserves some credit. And I think that we as a people, as humanity, have to stop putting everyone in a always bad, always good, and have to give people credit for when they're doing something good to encourage that good behavior moving forward. For whatever his motivations are, who knows? I don't understand him as a human being. He's very confusing to me. But I think that in this particular case, he was really the only person on the world stage that could get this done. And all the other leaders of the Western world have tried and failed, and even our past leaders have tried and failed.
I completely agree with you.
Kudos to him.
Yeah,
that was a really grown-up and important call. Thank you, Rob.
I mean, you're right. Obviously, you got to give Trump a lot of credit for this. And you're right. He brought the other countries together. He brought some of the the surrounding countries in to support this effort. And if it lasts, he does deserve a lot of credit.
No, and as Rob also said, prior presidents who you feel much better about than you do about Trump tried to do similar sorts of things. Obviously not these. Well, I guess Biden did in terms of what was happening in Gaza.
It's just
and
the
he was
Nobel
unsuccessful.
Peace Prize part that because he's almost bludgeoning people. You'll do better with your tariffs if you nominate me.
I think the
Nobel
more
Peace
he
Prize.
bludgeons, I don't know any of the people who do the Nobel selections.
Well, some say it could hurt.
I would say the more you campaign, the less likely it is you succeed.
And also, some people are arguing that we have to wait a little bit because there are some very difficult parts of this to negotiate. But, I'm no fan of the president, obviously, but if this works.
Okay, let's drop the Nobel for a few minutes. Okay, can we? Can you handle that? Good. Bill in Cambridge.
Hard for me, Jim.
Let's talk about the settlement. Let's talk about how Israel is viewed in the world, particularly in its greatest ally, United States. Hi, Bill. Cambridge. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I think President Trump has done some disqualifying actions just in his second term that disqualify him and should disqualify him for a Nobel Peace Prize. And let me just rattle off a few disqualifying things. He was responsible for Israel not listening to the other world leaders. So the prior speaker said, he's the only one Israel would listen to. That's because he created a lifeline for Israel's, and I'm a great supporter of Israel. I am. And they're in a tough neighborhood. But I still think, as we all know, they crossed the line into excessive bombing and limiting Israel would have been more likely to listen to other nations if Trump had gotten behind the other nations who were more reasonable. So he created a fire, and now he put out a fire. So, yes, congratulations, he put out the fire, but he helped create the fire. The one other thing I want to mention,
I think he added fuel to the fire. I don't think he created the fire, Bill, in all fairness.
Well, you could argue he should have stopped.
And Joe Biden was not doing so hot on the weapons front either, Bill.
So you could definitely argue he should have stopped, I think.
Bill, you got to come to a head because your connection's horrible. So give us your final line here, if you would, please.
A final line is, this is for the ages. His statement that he reserved the right to use force to go into Greenland shows contempt for international law. If it's not the end of international law, if the U.S. president can say, hey, here's this other nation 2,000 miles away, we have no historical footprint giving us ownership or taking it over, and we reserve the right.
Bill,
to
why'd you
force.
leave his celebrating on a red carpet a mass murderer, Putin? I mean, you're right. They're all other things. Just like, and thank you for the call. Just like there was an underside, and that's being euphemistic, to Henry Kissinger. But he did resolve the situation in Vietnam. Most people I know thought he didn't deserve it. He got it. So their standards are their standards. 877-301-8970.
Responsible in large part for the secret bombing of Cambodia, which we didn't know about for quite some time. Let's
Jean, we're going
Jean?
to Jean from Melrose.
Jean from Melrose. Hi,
You're
Jean.
next. Hi, Jean.
Hi. Okay, just briefly, this is negative on my part, but I don't trust anything that Trump does. And I feel like whatever the deal he made had something to do with some real estate deal he made. I'm against genocide on both sides, on all sides. And I know you didn't want to talk anymore about the Nobel Prize,
you can talk about whatever you want.
No, I just don't trust. I don't trust what he's done. And
does it matter what his motivation is if the end is what we all desire? To me, it does not. I don't think there's ever a motivation that is selfless coming out of Trump. But in this instance, considering the horror, I don't really care. Should I?
I think you should.
Okay.
And I think that's just my opinion. Like
I understand. I appreciate it.
But I mean, he sent Jared Kushner out there to make Gaza into a some kind of resort.
Right.
So I just feel that's what my feelings are.
Okay,
so
we appreciate your feelings. We're glad you shared them with us, Jean. Thanks.
I might guess that the Nobel Prize is his motivation.
It may be, and there may be a land deal. You don't know. But where are you on this? Is Jean thought that the motives do matter here? They don't to me. Maybe they will someday. But I don't ascribe any positive, selfless motives to anything Trump does.
This is about peace. I think it makes a mockery of the Nobel Peace Prize, like it did to give it to Kissinger, to give it to Donald Trump.
I'm not talking about the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well,
I'm
sorry. I'm stuck on the Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay, fine.
I don't know if I could take it, Jim. I don't know if I could take it. You know, he gets away with everything. If he gets away with this, it's just going to be...
What's more significant to you, considering your feelings about Trump, if he wins the Nobel Peace Prize or that he's been elected president of the United States by the American people twice? I would say the latter is a much more significant thing to be concerned about than a bunch of Swedes deciding he deserves an award.
I guess because it means not only
they are Swedish, right?
ABC,
Swedish.
I thought it was...
Oops. Did I just embarrass myself?
It's Norwegian.
Whatever it is, some Nordic country.
Norway. Oh, good. We're really impressive today, let me tell you. No, the fact that the American people have fallen for this, I don't blame, because I think people run these news holes and people are mad at the Democrats for legitimate reasons. I get all that. But if the whole world kind of, wants to give them the Nobel Peace Prize, and for their motives having to do with tariffs, having to do with not wanting him to be mad, if they're all knuckling under too, because this isn't going to be about merit. This is going to be about knuckling under to a guy they're afraid of. That's what it's going to be about.
I don't know if that is true. 877-301-8970. Are we supposed to explain to callers how we're doing this, or it doesn't matter to them, right? Okay, we get to. It's a little convoluted to do this today, but we're doing it. Charlotte, you're in Indiana. You're on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
First time, long time.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to point out that most Nobel Prize winners wait years before they find out if they're elected.
Not Barack Obama. Not Barack Obama.
Or Maria Ressa either. Well, years. I suppose she was years.
Ressa
she was
years.
You're right.
And years.
You're right. I retract that.
Well, I just think it's too soon to be talking about Israel and Trump's actions to create peace there. We'll have to wait and see if it holds.
I would, by the way, the grown-up position, I think, is yours, not because of the Nobel, but because of how much people really want a lasting peace in the Middle East. By the way, you're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Charlotte, thank you very much for your first call. We hope you call us again.
Judith in Framingham has a good point. Absolutely no peace prize. Have you heard his speeches, lectures lately? He hasn't renounced violence in any way except made-up violence, and I can't see the Nobel Committee taking that idea seriously.
Do you know anything about the Nobel Committee, by the way?
Nothing.
Neither do I. I didn't even know what country they're from.
I do know that over the summer, eager to boost his odds, the president phoned an influential Norwegian friend and former NATO Secretary General to float the topic of his winning the prize as the minister was walking along an Oslo street. But they point out that some fear it could be a sticky diplomatic situation if he does not win because of we're the most powerful nation on earth.
I hate to change the subject.
Are afraid.
Did you hear any of the interviews this morning with Palestinians in Gaza, and the release of pain? Not that it's going to undo the total destruction of their country, nor the death of so many loved ones and neighbors. But if ever people deserve that, and not to mention the Israelis, who hopefully, as a result of this, will not fear another October 7th. So this is...
I mean, these people are waiting to get back, if they can, to their loved ones. They're waiting for their home to be rebuilt. I mean, they have been starving. Well, a
rebuild is not going to happen tomorrow. Relief is hopefully going to happen today and tomorrow, beginning of the free flow of what they need to stay alive and not starve. Mark in Groveland, hey.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Well, thank you for the call.
Good. So my question is twofold. One is, how do you see the role of the Gazan population with respect to these negotiations? With my own perception that over the last 20 years, they've been complicit with Hamas in developing their war machine. And to what extent do they bear any responsibility to this in terms of this genocide? The other is what is the plan in terms of addressing the indoctrination that they give their kids to slit the throats of Jews and to kill every Western person on this planet unless they agree to submit to their ideologies.
Mark, so let me, Mark, you spoke. So what I will say back to you, Mark, every American then is responsible for $1 trillion in cuts in Medicaid, getting rid of the Obamacare premiums. Your remark is so irresponsible and so reprehensible. Of course, there are people among the Palestinians who support Hamas. And when they voted for them, it was not to vote for them to go slaughter Israelis and others. And it was a long time ago. There hasn't been an election in ages. So I'm not even going to address your question because it is really grotesque. But thank you very much for your call.
I think it's also worth reminding people that I think, 2/3 of the people that were killed were women and children.
You're talking about in Gaza. Yeah, I mean, the average Palestinian in Gaza wants to live and have a healthy and happy life like we do, Mark, but I don't think you're probably ever going to understand that.
Okay, we're going to keep talking about the hope for a lasting peace between Israel and Gaza, that this war is over. Of course, we're going to talk about my little side issue about whether you think Donald Trump should win the Nobel Prize, because I think when you say the word Nelson Mandela or Desmond Tutu, Barack Obama, the word Donald Trump comes right to mind. I'm Marjorie Egan, Eastern Crowd. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Jake Tapper. He takes us inside one of the most dramatic, little-known cases in modern counterterrorism. His new book, Race Against Terror, follows 2 U.S. attorneys racing against time to build a legal case against an al-Qaeda killer after he surrenders. What happens when the justice system is challenged by geopolitics, war zones, and a questionable confession? That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Art Complex Museum in Duxbury, featuring artwork this fall from the Boston Printmakers and the New England Mosaic Society, plus a special exhibit of miniatures from the museum's collection. More at artcomplex.org. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Margaret Egan and Jim Browder streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the BPL tomorrow. The mayor joins us at the library, Mayor Wu, on October 28th from noon to 1. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about hope that this first phase of a peace deal that was brokered by Trump could lead to something lasting. We know in the short term, hostages will be released. There's a ceasefire. Palestinian prisoners will be released, and obviously, really importantly, relief will hopefully flow into Gaza in a much more fluid way than it has to date.
And it's been so troubling to read the stories of the hostages that have been released already about the torturous lives they lived in these tunnels, begging for a glass of water, not getting anything to eat, not being able to see the sun. It was just horrible. But I want to read some of the texts from people.
Sure.
Somebody mentioned Doctors Without Borders deserves the Nobel. They did win the Nobel, Doctors Without Borders. I think that was, I don't have the year, but I think it was 94. And then nominations for this year's Peace Prize ended in January, and that's true. But I believe Barack Obama was nominated after the nominations ended. There is a short list already.
Well, some people did nominate Donald Trump, by the way. I don't know.
Well, he wasn't on the short
okay,
list.
right.
That's what the reporting is. He was not.
I don't think you have
list.
to worry that he's getting the Nobel Peace Prize tomorrow, Marjorie. I'm not the
you,
authority.
Jim,
I didn't even know what country it came from.
I think we should make a bet.
I don't think it is.
I think we should make a bet.
I don't think it's happening.
Okay.
Let's take. Can we take?
And Caroline from Newton points out, what about the war in Ukraine and Russia, that the president is probably on the wrong side, or has been until recently.
Well, he's not on the wrong side today, but he was on the wrong side. We don't think, anyway. In any case, Eli from Sturbridge, you're on BPR with Margaret Egan and Jim Browder. It's me. Hi.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for making it.
Of course, I'm excited and hopeful for peace in Gaza. It's so important. On the Nobel Prize topic, I would think that waging war on our own cities might disqualify you for that.
Oh, are you Jay in Providence?
Eli from Sturbridge.
Eli from Sturbridge, because Jay in Brighton, actually. No, was it in Providence?
Wherever
anyway, he just texted the same thing. You can't be waging war in your own country and with a Nobel Prize.
So can you call the judges, Eli, so that Marjorie's stress level is reduced fairly dramatically quickly? Thank you for the call. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Okay. What are we doing?
We're going to Janet.
We're going to Janet.
From?
She's next. We don't know, but she's next.
Where she's not.
She's not ready.
Okay.
She's
By the way,
ready.
the reason
we're having phone problems.
We're not, but they're solvable today. If you call, you will get on the show, subject to time. So we're working it out.
Okay.
We should the Obama thing. A lot of people are texting about the Obama thing again. We said this at the time. It wasn't. I think it's fair to say Obama didn't get the Peace Prize for what he had done.
No,
it was for what the hope was.
Hope and change.
Which to me is not exactly Nobel-ready kind of thing.
No, he shouldn't have gotten it either. I don't think so. I mean, many people are texting about all the drone attacks that he was criticized for during the Iraq-Afghanistan conflict.
Well, that was after he got it, even though he shouldn't have gotten it when he did get it. He got it really early on. As you know, Janet from New York.
Someone just texted right here about the drone assaults.
No, but it was after he got the prize.
It was after, but still, it was premature. Let's put it that way.
It was premature. Janet from New York, welcome.
Thank you. I actually am from New Jersey, and I used to live in Brookline, though.
Oh.
That's why I'm listening to you.
Well, good.
And I can't give you up, even though I've just moved.
We love that.
Good. We'd like
you.
to hear that, Janet.
It's true. The problem with Trump is that he is politicking so much for this. And that's the most low-class thing to me. I can't stand to listen to somebody do that. It'd be one thing if he just was awarded it, but here he's been asking for it and begging for it, and it sounds so manipulative that he's helping to negotiate this just because he wants to win the Peace Prize. He doesn't really care about peace, and the fact that he's waging war on our own people shows that. Peace is not something that he values.
Well, putting the prize aside for a minute, which almost nobody can this morning, apparently, a earlier caller, I wouldn't say criticized me, disagreed with me when I said I don't think I care about his motives at all, as long as peace, hopefully a lasting peace, and we haven't said this, hopefully, even though Netanyahu and Trump both oppose it, a two-state solution occurs. Am I wrong to say his motivation doesn't matter?
I think it matters completely.
Okay. You're not alone. Hey, Janet, thanks for the call. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM.
In this Washington Post story, it talks about the president's quote-unquote naked hunger to win, but it has shifted foreign diplomacy. It may actually have helped spur Hamas and Israeli officials to strike this bargain this week. One Israeli negotiator said...
to beat the Friday date?
In hopes of being able to announce a buzzer-beating peace and Nobel Prize so he could take home the gold. That's the way the Washington Post wrote it. So, I mean, that's the irony.
That was in the Washington Post?
It was in the Washington Post.
Oh, my God.
That's the irony that it may have helped bring this piece about right now.
Good. And if that's, again, I'm fine with that, too. Wendy, you are also from New York, apparently. Hi.
Hi, I'm on the Mass border in Canaan, New York.
We love that. Hi. You have a minute.
I'd like to chime in. So Netanyahu has flattened Gaza. There's no way for people there to earn a living, grow food. Trump funded this massive genocide with illegal authorizations of money to Israel for weapons without congressional approval.
How about Biden? How about Biden?
Biden, guilty.
Yeah, okay. As long as you call it even-handed. Yeah, go ahead.
In fact, I went to vote. I picked up my ballot, and I walked and put it empty into the ballot box. I did not vote for Biden. I was so angry with him. And Trump has violated the Constitution. He's the cruelest person. He's waging war. I agree with Eli. He's waging war on our country, on the world, with cutting off USAID funds.
We got it. Wendy, we appreciate your thoughts. We're just out of time.
It's just hard to
Thanks
get it
for
out of your
sharing them
mouth.
with us.
Champion for peace.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, Jim.
He's going to be chair of this Board of Peace deal, too, whatever the hell that is.
The board of the Peace Committee, or whatever it is. Oh, my God. Okay, we're moving on. Coming up after this quick break.
Unresolved is what the role of Palestinians are in self-governance, too. That's another issue that is
the technocrats or something like that. I don't really understand it, who's going to run the country. But anyway, after this quick break, we're going to talk to longtime journalist, great journalist, Margaret Sullivan. She's going to zoom in, talk about how well journalism has been covering the Trump presidency. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
$100,000 fee for a work visa in the United States. That is the new price tag to bring high-skilled workers here.
I think it's not worth the effort. It's not worth the money. It's not worth an unstable future.
It's not worth it, and it's pushing companies to locate their workers someplace else. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst. UMass, the state's flagship public research university, empowers students to be the future in the pursuit of progress for Massachusetts and beyond. More at umass.edu. And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank. Brilliantly boring since 1865.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. She's Marjorie Egan. I'm Jim Browdy. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Boston Baroque will join us in play for Live Music Friday. On October 28th, Mayor Michelle Wu, will join us for Ask the Mayor from noon to 1. You know, not a week goes by on the show where either Marjorie or I don't cite something we read on our next guest's wildly popular Substack, American Crisis, which explores the relationship between journalism and a faltering American small d democracy. It's written by Margaret Sullivan, former media columnist for the Washington Post, former public editor of the New York Times, a job title that no longer exists. She's now at The Guardian, where she writes a column on media, politics, and culture. And again, her Substack is American Crisis, available at margaretsullivan.substack.com. Margaret Sullivan, we're thrilled to have you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate being able to talk to your listeners.
Great.
Well,
and to you.
You're
and to you.
And to you.
You're talking to the big fan club here, Margaret Sullivan. Let me tell
thank
you,
you.
we're
That's
big fans.
Very kind. I appreciate that. I mean, I try to tell the truth about what I see in the media, which is, as you know, hardly flawless, but still super important to our society and our democracy.
Well, tell people who may not know about what you're doing, what you've been doing about the way the media has been covering the presidency of Donald Trump.
Yes.
What's your takeaway?
Well,
I hate that word, but what is it?
Yeah. I joined the Washington Post just before Trump began his first term. In fact, my two first assignments there were to go to the Republican and the Republican and Democratic national conventions in 2016. So then, he got elected, and I was there as media columnist. And I've been saying now for years, and it's getting to be 10 years, that the news media, the traditional legacy, big journalism news media, does not do a good job of covering Trump, doesn't seem to know how to, or maybe doesn't want to. Took them forever to even say the word lie. And, it's just been very dispiriting to see the way, his lies have been magnified by the media, the way he hasn't been fully held accountable. And now, we see what the result of that is, which is that we're moving all too quickly in the direction of an authoritarian country.
It's when we were reading you and talking about what you were writing in the first term, I wasn't sympathetic to, but I got that traditional journalists were having a hard time sort of pivoting, one of my least favorite words, to a new reality with a totally different kind of president. I am amazed, though, that we're, 8-9 months into the second term, and there's still so much. The one thing that you cited, by the way, that is emblazoned on my head that I can never get out, which was a small thing but important, headlines matter. A lot of people, and I am embarrassed to say, myself included, occasionally when you're scanning things, you just see headlines. Trump, this is in May, I think you did this. Trump gave this speech at West Point commencement. Here's the headline in the New York Times, thanks to Margaret Sullivan. Trump gives commencement address at West Point, stressing a new era. Now, here's the headline in a British publication called The Independent, which is exactly what happened if you saw it. Trump gives rambling speech about trophy wives, golf, and the great late Al Capone in politically charged West Point address. Why do we not have that as part of our being to be able to write that as a headline in the Washington Post or the New York Times or wherever, Margaret?
Yeah, it is confounding, and we're still seeing so much of that. I mean, I think there's a combination of things going on here. One of the biggest things is that the news media, the traditional news media, does not want to be seen as biased. Right. They don't want to be seen as liberal. They fear that, in fact. And so there's this really strong effort to, treat Trump with great respect and to treat his cult-like following with great respect and not to do anything that could be seen as biased. And so, but the result of that is that, you have to think about being fair not only to the people you're covering, but to your audience and to the nation. And I don't think it's fair to misrepresent things. And you're absolutely right that, some of these speeches, and during the campaign too, all that stuff about sharks and electric, whatever it was,
the windmills.
Hannibal Lecter, all these, insane things. And it would be like the headline or the words in the headline would be like, Trump gives freewheeling speech or something. It's like, well, I guess you could call it freewheeling, but it's actually nuts. And also, it's we all know this. There's something wildly, compelling about it and sort of weirdly entertaining, but it's not funny because, as I said, I think we're really going in a very bad direction and are already have already crossed a a Rubicon in many ways.
We're talking to Margaret Sullivan. Her Substack is American Crisis.
I was a newspaper reporter for most of my life before I started doing the radio, and I get the whole thing, about down the middle. And we get complaints about that sometimes on the radio, like or text messages, why don't you give both sides? But what I see this is, it's almost like some people think that he's Mitt Romney, or he's George W. Bush. He's a lawbreaker in so many areas, and
right.
Been adjudicated a lawbreaker, and civilly and criminally, and so
right. It's a whole other thing.
It's a whole other thing.
Traditional. It's not the sort of and the word conservative is really misused now because Trump is not in any way a traditional conservative Republican. I mean, he's kind of his own scary thing, but. We do, as the media goes, it wants desperately to normalize. It just really wants to make things the way they've always been. And so it made sense in the era of George W. Bush and other, conservative Republicans to, you could quote the president and chances are, at least it would be true, but that is no longer the case. And, we haven't made that adjustment. And it's really wrong and really unfortunate. The other thing that drives me nuts, and this is in a lot of headlines, I wrote a piece about this recently, is this thing about Trump winning.
Yes.
He'll get another, it'll be like, Trump, gets this ruling from the Supreme Court that he can do whatever at any time. Well, that's a win, and ICE can racially profile people. That's a win. I don't know. I guess it's a political win in a sense, but it's a little hard for me to see that as a win for the country. And I don't think it should be expressed as a win.
I've got note takers on the following, so with some trepidation, I'm going to broach this with you, Margaret Sullivan. Marjorie used the euphemistic term lawbreaker before. I don't understand why, when Trump talks about Epstein, why don't we say somewhere down the story that he was found liable of sexual abuse in a New York court? When he talks about tax cuts, why don't we say that he was found liable for business fraud in the Trump organization for criminal tax fraud?
Yeah.
When he talks about Democrats being criminals, why don't we say he's a 34-time felon? Doesn't that give context? I mean this seriously.
Yes, it should. I mean, even if we say, well, headlines have to be short and they can't get the full thing across, you would think that the stories themselves would have that kind of context in it. And, there's this, people often say to me, well, how would you like to see Trump covered? And, one thing that comes up is this concept of the truth sandwich, where you don't just repeat the lie and then like in the 15th paragraph say, well, that's a baseless claim, which by the way, someday I want to have a band called the Baseless Claim.
Or without evidence.
It could be a bar. Yeah, without evidence. But at any rate, the truth sandwich would actually present what's the truth. Then, you could say, and here's what this politician, which could be Trump or one of his pals, has to say that's 100% wrong. And then you fact check it after that so that what you're putting out there more or less is the truth. And that the headline would reflect that too. I mean, the problem with that, as you guys know, is that that's kind of not like traditional journalism. Like that doesn't look like a story that would be on the front page of the Boston Globe, or it doesn't look like a story that would be on the front page of the Times, the homepage of the New York Times website. So it's hard to make traditional, we're still functioning with this sort of traditional model, and we haven't really, I'm saying we, meaning journalism writ large, we haven't really adjusted ourselves, even though there have been now many, many years of having a chance to adjust. And I think some of that comes down to what's the leadership in these newsrooms? What are they telling reporters and editors? Are they saying, we're here to serve the public and to hold people accountable, so let's make sure our work constantly reflects that? Or are they saying, and I think this is actually what they're saying, is we need to appeal to everybody. We want a big tent. We don't want to really alienate, a third to a half of the potential audience. So let's make sure that we're independent and fair-minded, all of which sounds great, but it results in this kind of both sidesy thing that you're talking about of treating unequal things as if they were equal.
What is Barry Weiss going to say to her newsroom at CBS?
Well, I heard what she said the other day, but I can't say it on public radio.
Give us the gist of it. What did she say?
Said she gave a talk, a kind of a rabble-rousing, or not rabble-rousing, but a pep talk, I guess, to the staff. And her last line, which I understand got a lot of eye rolls, was, "All right, let's go do the effing news. Let's go do the effing news," except she actually said the word, which, that doesn't really read that well to at CBS News, where these are some very serious practitioners and they don't need to be told by, Barry Weiss that we're going to go do the news.
Well, CBS, let's talk about that, because you've written about that and talked about that too. She's going to take over the news department there. I've been monitoring 60 Minutes when they came back. So far, they haven't really been capitulating. But
after the capitulation, they haven't been capitulating?
Well, after the initial capitulating, I watched 60 Minutes last 2 weeks. It's been fine. But why does that matter? They like ABC and the Washington Post, and law firms, and probably the Nobel Peace Prize Committee in just a day or two.
Everybody's and universities.
Universities, right, capitulating to Trump. So what does that mean for us?
Well, I don't know how that's going to, just looking at CBS, so taking it a little narrowly here, I don't know how Barry Weiss and the earlier capitulations, the settlement of the lawsuit and all of that, I don't know how that's going to translate into what we see on the air. Is the evening newscast, which is already the third of the three, easily the least well-rated, going to have a different tone? Is 60 Minutes going to start to really pull its punches, or maybe just do different kinds of stories? I think there's a sort of self-censorship that does start to set in. And so, maybe we don't do the big story about Stephen Miller, or we choose to do something about oceans instead. It's hard to be sure those conversations might not even be conversations. They could be just like, oh yeah, we all get it, that we're not supposed to do this stuff.
Can we stay on that just for a second? And maybe you have settled this dispute we had, but maybe it didn't. Right after Ruth Marcus resigned from the Washington Post, columnist of the Washington Post, after the publisher killed her piece on Jeff Bezos, she wrote a piece in the New Yorker saying, I thought this was quite courageous to admit that she had sort of self-censored. I think a piece about Bezos and Trump, I'm not sure they were the subject, but she acknowledged, at least in 2 columns, she was more mild in her criticism than she actually felt. And that week, by chance, one day we had Chuck Todd on, who's with us every week. Another day we had Marty Barron, obviously former editor of the Globe and the Washington Post, for those who don't know. And Marjorie or I said, we're worried about that kind of thing trickling down to the reporters, for example. And even if it's not a conscious act, are they going to be spiking some things that they otherwise would cover? Chuck Todd said, I've spoken to my former colleagues at NBC News. Some of them are already doing it. Marty Barron says, I speak to my colleagues at former colleagues at the Washington Post the whole time. Nobody's doing it. Are they?
Well, I think that I do draw a line at the Washington Post between the opinion side and the news side.
The news side, by the way.
I haven't seen that. Even though I'm very mad at the Washington Post and very upset and disappointed in what's happened there, I think the news report is still very strong and very good. And they've got a good editor in Matt Murray. And so I don't see that happening. I think the news report is still really strong. There might be some of that, but so far, no. But on the opinion side, absolutely. It's a radical change. And people who've left or gotten fired on the opinion side, it's a travesty. Some of the best people, just to mention 2 people, Eugene Robinson, great columnist who, left because obviously he wasn't aligned over there, and Ann Telnis, the political cartoonist, who did do a Bezos cartoon, which was, pretty out there, I have to say. And, it was spiked, and so she left the paper. And so, those are both on the opinion side, but just 2 examples out of many. That is a completely different outfit right now than it was, 3 months ago.
Yeah, we're talking with Margaret Sullivan, who writes a great column that you can get on Substack. I want to. The media took a lot of legitimate criticism for not looking more closely at Joe Biden's mental health and physical health, but it seems we're repeating ourselves now. It's like we've learned nothing with Donald Trump's mental health. Why are we doing that?
Well, it's as Jim said early on, this thing of he's always been so unhinged in his comments. I'm not sure how I'm not sure how you say, well, he used to be really cogent and really sober and everything, and now he's not. I don't know, when did that happen? It happened a long time ago. So maybe it's sort of like we've become acculturated, if that's the right word, or inured to it. I know you guys have a fancy Harvard audience, so I can use those big words.
That's right. We don't understand, but our audience does. Yeah, it's fine. Good.
Anyway, I think some of it is just that Trump has always been so out there in his comments that it's like there didn't come a moment where, of course there was that moment with Biden where he walked out onto the debate stage and we all realized, this cannot go forward. And then, as you say, there's been all this criticism that the press didn't cover that. It's a great question. I do think that Trump is not being held to the same standard at all, nowhere near the same standard. And that's, so with all this talk about, we want to hold everybody to the same standard, they're not holding people to the same standard.
You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM.
So who is standing up besides Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert?
Yeah, so it's sort of a bizarre thing that the late night comics or the late night hosts are the ones who are doing the job. I think there are a lot of independent journalists, a lot of opinion journalists who have done a good job of calling things out. I'm not on the staff at The Guardian, but I have a contract with them, so I write for them regularly. I think The Guardian has done a good job.
It's a great publication.
Right. And the other thing I appreciate about it is there's no strict paywall. So one of the things that's really worrisome is that, there's a lot of good information out there, but it's only available to people who can pay these high subscription rates. Well, that's not true at The Guardian, but enough, I don't want to seem like I'm doing PR for The Guardian, but I do think that. I also think the New Republic does some great work. Some of the things that we think of more as sort of opinion/magazines seem to be doing a better job. And then there are a lot of independents who are doing well. And I do see very good journalism in the New York Times, a lot of very good journalism in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, and I admire the Globe. In fact, the Globe is one of the few local or regional newspapers that has continued to do its mission the way it's supposed to. And that is, I think, in large part because it has local ownership.
I hate to end on an up note, Margaret Sullivan, but if I can for a second, we hypothesized around, I assume a lot of people did, about whether or not Kimmel's return, we don't know how long it's going to be, was a function of a popular uprising among a generally pretty meek population in this country. Is that why Kimmel is back on the air, or are we being unduly optimistic?
I do think that the public did not want that. I also think that there were even, amazingly, some Republicans like Ted Cruz and others who stood up and said, no, that's not okay. And so there was a little bit of bipartisanness to it. And I think that, advertisers, you have to look at sort of self-interest here on the part of the network. And so, does that translate into other areas? I think it could. So maybe it's a model for standing up for things. And that would be a happy note to end on.
We can't tell you how happy you are you spent some time with us, Margaret Sullivan. Hope you do it again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. We have been speaking with the Guardian media writer Margaret Sullivan. She's got a great Substack column. It's called American Crisis. It's available at margaretsullivan.substack.com. And again, we very much appreciate her time.
Great to have you,
We say
Margaret.
goodbye
Thanks.
to those of you listening to us on NEPM, but make sure to tune into the fabulous 413 starting at 3 this afternoon. We're going to keep going here in Boston. After the new news, we'll speak with Thea Riofrancos about her new book, all about the role of lithium mining and what it's doing in the climate crisis. That's not very good. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Browder and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And the Lyric Stage, presenting Our Town, an American classic for our time. Even in the smallest of moments, beauty is there, and the secret to life is to stop and take notice. September 19th through October 19th at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com. Almost 21, Samuel's every rite of passage is fraught with challenges and social barriers. Can a community of disability activists help him follow his dreams? Watch POV, The Ride Ahead, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, head on Hour 2 of BPR. Lithium batteries have been heralded as the hero of the clean energy transition, but lithium mining comes with the same environmental and social costs of any extractive market. Providence College professor and climate researcher Thea Riofrancos joins to discuss her new book, Extraction, The Frontier of Green Capitalism, examining the actual costs and harm of our clean energy transition.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then former Public Safety Secretary Andrea Cabral and former FBI Director James Comey pleading not guilty. And the latest on a series of street takeovers, scores of people damaging police cars in Boston in the middle of the night. Plus, street artist Victor Quinones on his public art display on the Rose Kennedy Greenway and at BU. That's all next in the second hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Dale Willman. We're waiting for the start of President Trump's cabinet meeting where the government shutdown is expected to be discussed. That shutdown is now in its 9th day, and so far there appears to be no immediate path forward. Israel and Hamas have agreed to the first phase of a ceasefire. It's supposed to go into effect later today. Israel is to free thousands of Palestinian prisoners and detainees, while Hamas is to release all 20 living hostages within days. NPR's Carrie Kahn reports that Israelis are celebrating the news.
In a downtown Tel Aviv plaza where families and supporters of hostages held in Gaza have gathered for more than 2 years of the war, crowds flooded in to celebrate.
The United States of America.
Many are praising President Trump. One man waving huge American and Israeli flags called Trump the 8th wonder of the world. Another person dressed as Trump posed for selfies with many. Dani Miran, the father of Omri, a hostage in Gaza, said he is on top of the clouds. It's a supreme feeling. I feel like I'm about to see my son any moment now, like he is reborn, he says. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
A federal judge is hearing arguments today about the legality of President Trump's deployment of National Guard troops to Illinois. NPR's Sergio Martinez-Beltran reports from Chicago.
Many Chicago residents have 3 questions. Why is the National Guard in town? Do people need to protect themselves? And what can the city of Chicago do to block the National Guard from assisting ICE in the city? The Trump administration has said the Guard troops have orders to protect federal functions, personnel, and property, specifically ICE operations. Mayor Brandon Johnson says he will do whatever it takes to protect the residents and fight what he calls a federal invasion. Meanwhile, President Trump has called for the arrest of Johnson. Trump accused the mayor of failing to protect ICE officers. Sergio Martinez Beltran, NPR News, Chicago.
On Wall Street, investors are digesting better than expected earnings reports from Pepsi and Delta. NPR's Scott Horsley has our reports.
Pepsi sales in North America have lost a little fizz. The company points to falling demand for soft drinks and salty snacks in the region. That was offset, however, by stronger sales in Asia and Latin America, boosting Pepsi's worldwide sales by more than 2.5%. Delta Airlines also reported better than expected sales and profits for its most recent quarter. That gave a lift to Delta's own stock and shares in other airlines as well. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Texas top criminal court has again paused the execution of Robert Robertson just days before he had been set to become the first person in the U.S. put to death in a shaken baby case. Stocks on Wall Street are down across the board slightly. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Blue Cross Blue Shield has offered voluntary buyouts to 750 employees as it deals with deep financial losses. The Boston Business Journal reports that the healthcare system, which is the largest in Massachusetts, is facing its greatest financial losses in its history. The buyouts are the first for the insurer since the late 1980s, when the Massachusetts economy was hammered by technology and real estate busts. 750 employees amounts to about 18% of Blue Cross's workforce. Disability advocates and wheelchair users have gathered at the State House today on Beacon Hill to urge action on legislation that would improve delays in wheelchair repairs. Advocates have described long repair wait times as a crisis of equity that strips away independence and puts health at risk. They say bills to address the issue have been repeatedly stalled on Beacon Hill, including measures that would set repair timelines and eliminate certain insurance obstacles. In sports, the Bruins home ice tonight at the Garden. They play the Blackhawks. Thursday night football, the Eagles at the Giants. And playoff baseball, the Phillies at the Dodgers tonight, the Brewers at the Cubs. And in the forecast, sunny and cool today, high mid to upper 50s. A frost warning for overnight, low in the 30s. Better get those plants in today. Sunny and low 60s tomorrow, mostly cloudy, mid 60s on Saturday. We are at 52 degrees in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, a personalized program that bases rates on safe driving habits, at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. You're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with live music from Boston Baroque, Sue O'Connell, our media maven, and more. Michelle Wu, the mayor, will be with us again on October 28th from noon to 1, also at the Boston Public Library. And just a programming note, only 24 days until we change the clocks, and Jim gets to talk about daylight saving time.
It's a national tragedy.
For
You
the
can
60th,
make fun of it all you want.
For the 60th time
Yeah.
in our
Me
career.
and Ed Markey.
Yeah, that's right.
Over the years, we've heard and talked a lot about the transition away from fossil fuels as part of the efforts to curb the impacts of human-caused climate change. And lithium batteries have been heralded as the hero of the clean energy transition, largely due to the use in rechargeable batteries for electric vehicles. But as with any mineral, mining for lithium has costs, environmental and social. Thea Riofrancos has spent years researching the costs of this latest extraction market, taking her to salt flats in Chile, the Silver Peak Range in Nevada, and the riverbanks of northern Portugal to answer the fundamental question, is it all worth it? She's a political science professor at Providence College, strategic co-director of the Climate and Community Institute, and she writes all about it in her new book, Extraction, The Frontiers of Green Capitalism. She joins us on Zoom. Thea, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you very much for joining us. So expand on what Jim said. You detailed the damage being done here. So is it worth it?
It is worth it, but we have to do it right and probably a little bit differently than we are. I'm a committed activist for an energy transition, for climate action. This book is not to dissuade people from the urgent cause of an energy transition to avoid the most catastrophic climate change scenarios. But it is to call our attention to the fact that the energy transition has its own environmental costs. And we need to think about that. Some of those costs are really coming home. We have more mining in the US as well related to the energy transition. So this might show up in, not necessarily listeners' backyards, but in the US West especially. And so it's not a far away issue. It's a right here issue. And there are, as I discovered in doing my research, a lot of different ways to get all the carbon pollution out of the transportation sector.
Well,
The way that causes the most harm is the idea that every single person needs their own electric vehicle. So I get into different transportation policies that can address the climate crisis without causing as much ecological harm.
I am Jim Braude, who has my own electric vehicle. We'll talk about me in a couple of minutes. Thea, can you describe?
As do I.
Can you describe at least one of the places you visited that I mentioned? Consequences have been in that area, in that region?
I'll start with Chile because that's where this mining has been going on the longest, so we see the environmental impacts. Chile provides 20 to 25% of the world's lithium. It's a major producer. All of that comes from this beautiful desert in the northern reaches of the country, and particularly from one huge salt flat that I'm calling in from Rhode Island, next door to Massachusetts. That salt flat is 2/3 the size of Rhode Island. So it's very large. There are major lithium mines on it, and they suck out lithium brine from underneath the salt crust and then evaporate it to get a lithium concentrate. That whole process has shown to affect the water supplies, reduce biodiversity, and in addition, impact the rights of indigenous communities that live nearby the mines, right? So we have environmental issues, social issues, but water has really been the key because climate change is affecting water. Climate change is making deserts drier. So ideally, the mining to address climate change would not also have such an impact on the water system, but it really has.
What kind of blowback is there in Chile?
There have been protests, that have popped up sometimes very intensely over the past, honestly, almost 2 decades at this point. We have had recurrent protests where indigenous communities and environmental advocates have even blocked the road leading to the mine because of really elevated concerns over its impacts. We've had government lawsuits. So the government of Chile is not ignorant of these issues. They have prosecuted and in some cases settled with mining companies because of demonstrable harm to the environment.
And one of these stories we read in preparation for talking to you from the Atlantic talked about cobalt mining, too, that uses child labor. So that's obviously not optimal.
No, I think it's worth highlighting that mining is just one of the most nefarious industries on Earth. There's lots of industries out there with environmental and social impacts, but mining accounts for the most deaths of activists who try to protest it. It has really intense localized impacts that are often irreversible. And so I think it's just about thinking through that, being intentional. We know that we have to expand some mining to make these green technologies. How do we do that in a way that doesn't reproduce sometimes very grave human rights and environmental harms?
How do we do it in that way? Is there technology in the wings that would make lithium extraction less damaging?
Absolutely. I really believe in science and innovation and human ingenuity. This book is not about, saying we shouldn't try to do things better. There are ways to do things better. What's often in the way is that mining companies have a lot of power where they operate. They're big multinational firms. There's a huge reputation of corruption and kind of underhanded lobbying techniques with the mining industry. So even though we do have technologies to use less water, less land, we also know that laws and rights enforcement can help protect communities, but it's about the lobbying industry needing to be regulated better so it doesn't stand in the way of needed reforms.
Talk for a minute about what it means to go into a mine in Chile or Argentina or places that you know well. What does that mean for the workers?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost hard to express what it's like to be in an actual mine if you've never done it before because they're so enormous. I mean, we're talking about many, many football fields, right? And so I visited, large scale copper mines. It's a 2-mile hole in the ground, right? And, with workers historically, and in some cases in the present, it's a very exploitative, very harmful industry. But I want to add like a more recent twist, which is that a lot of mining is getting automated. And the reason I bring that up is that we have fewer workers per mine. Communities are often promised, you're going to get a lot of jobs out of this. But increasingly, technology is replacing humans, so they don't even get the economic benefit of jobs, which is why we really need to think of how do we regulate this better so communities aren't pummeled with environmental impacts and not even getting environmental benefits out of the mine.
We're talking with Thea Riofrancos. The book is Extraction: The Frontiers of Green Capitalism. So if you're thinking about buying an EV, you're still better off environmentally with an EV than a gas car or a hybrid?
Absolutely. I mean, I do want to be clear that for climate purposes, we need to get rid of gas-powered vehicles. And hybrids are really kind of a non-solution because they still require the extraction of fossil fuels. They still have a gas engine. They still produce localized pollution and contribute to climate change as well once you're on the gas rather than the battery. I own an electric vehicle. I own a Chevy Bolt. And one of the reasons I bought that one is because it's relatively small battery, which means less, raw materials. And but going back to your worker point, it's made with union labor, which is very important to me as a consumer, right? And so there are better choices to be made. Cars with smaller batteries that are more normal size sedans rather than a huge SUV, less lithium, less mining. Mass transit, walking, electric bikes, all of those are less total resource extraction. Boston and, the greater Boston area and Massachusetts has been making great strides with getting people to encourage mass transit, new funding for mass transit coming out of the State House. Like, these are real solutions that help make transportation more affordable for working class people and also require less raw materials.
While you made a conscious decision, Thea, to buy a smaller EV, I ended up buying a Model 3 Tesla, and I always have to qualify by saying before Doge and before all that, you have to do that, a disclaimer. And I didn't know until I was preparing to talk to you today that I actually made a good choice because it has something called an LFP, which is cobalt free. Am I right about that?
Yes. So there are different battery chemistries and they all have these confusing acronyms. And some of them have cobalt and nickel. Cobalt, as we just said, is linked to a lot of human rights violations in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so LFP has the advantage, we could say, of not having cobalt, but also being a cheaper and therefore more affordable battery chemistry, right? And so when we think about what are the blocks preventing working and middle class Americans from buying EVs, a lot of it is that they're expensive. And even with the rebate that Biden put in, this is a big new asset for a working class family to purchase. So we have to make the cars cheaper, and we also have to give people other transportation options aside from, shelling out the money on a new vehicle.
So we haven't talked about Donald Trump for about 12 minutes. So can we return to Donald Trump for a couple things? The first question I'm not sure has relevance. Is there any consequence of having a U.S. president, vis-a-vis your work, a U.S. president who has an aversion to EVs other than when he was the chief salesperson for Tesla at the White House? Does that have any impact on any of this or no?
Yes. I mean, actually, Trump is making these very bizarre and kind of contradictory moves in this sector. So on the one hand, he's dismantling, him and his allies in Congress are dismantling government support for EVs, which is going to make them more expensive and going to slow down the transition. So we know that. But oddly enough, he loves lithium mines. And actually, the Trump government is actively supporting lithium mines in a couple of ways. They've bought direct shares in a lithium mining company to help boost them financially. They're also fast tracking, which is not good. That's deregulation. They're moving the lithium mines faster and reducing the permitting times and the community consultations. So Trump likes lithium mining, doesn't like the main use of lithium mining, which is electric vehicles. It's a little contradictory, but, that's not news, I guess.
What do you make of the investment that the taxpayers are making through Donald Trump in some of this mining? What's the agenda?
I really think it helps the companies first and foremost, some of which are not American companies. So this idea of America first, some of them are Canadian mining companies that the U.S. government has bought shares in. And, we're basically uplifting the shares of those companies. We're benefiting wealthy Americans. Those are the primary shareholders in the stock market. And it's not clear what the taxpayer benefit is. We're not even ensuring that this mining goes to socially useful purposes like the energy transition. It could go to AI, to military hardware. It could go to abroad, to export markets. I mean, all the U.S. government is doing is propping up the financial value of these firms, which doesn't directly benefit the ordinary American.
We're talking to Thea Riofrancos from Providence College. Her book is Extraction.
So we're going to put you in the Consumer Reports here position for people that are thinking about, you mentioned a Chevy Volt because it's union labor.
And small.
And small. Yeah. I mean, you and I at the same time bought, they were not small. They were Highlanders.
Many years ago.
Yeah, many, many years ago. They were hybrids. They were Toyota Highlanders. But the battery that everybody told me was going to be so expensive to replace lasted for 12 years in my car. I think it lasted that long in your car, too. So there is a long, at least, shelf life for these batteries.
Yeah, the consumer benefit of an electric vehicle, aside from the climate benefit, we'll just put that aside, just economically, is in some cases the sticker price is more, but the cost of maintenance of the car is so much less. You're not filling it with gasoline. If you have the privilege to have an outdoor outlet at your home, you can, charge it every night, very low cost. There's no moving parts to the car, so you never have to bring it really to a mechanic. I mean, you have to replace the tires every so often, the brakes every so often. But as someone whose car died out on the highway with a transmission gone wrong, that's very scary, right? That was what caused me to switch to the EV because I wasn't going to buy a gas-powered car in 2023 at, being a climate activist. So point being, you really don't have to spend much money on mechanical repairs. And so overall, it's less expensive. What we need to deal with is the sticker price. We need U.S. companies to provide lower cost models. We need the U.S. government to give better, or state governments to give better subsidies to working and middle class people.
And where would you advise people to go to get the online? You look up Toyota versus Chevy Volt versus Hyundai versus Honda.
And what's tricky about it, and I'm glad you brought in some of the foreign automakers that sell in U.S. markets too, is you face a complicated trade-off. The foreign automakers sell the smaller cars that are cheaper, but those aren't often made with union labor, which is important to me. It depends on the person, which is why I had to do this complicated Venn diagram that the only car was the Chevy Bolt that had the union labor and had a smaller environmental footprint, and there's a lot of used ones on the market. I bought mine used, and I lots of money that way. So people right now, consumer advocates are saying it's a very good moment to buy used EVs. They're even a better deal than used gas powered cars at this time. So I would look at the used market as well.
So can we return, you touched in passing, Thea, a few minutes ago, with, short of a smaller EV, you have a lot of bigger ideas, longer term ideas, I would argue, about how we escape this harm from the production of these batteries. Share a few with us and then talk about whether or not there are parts of the world that are actually experimenting successfully with these approaches, if you would.
Absolutely. So I go to both ends of the supply chain. The first is where mining happens. Mining has to be governed better. And that includes in the U.S. We might think, our laws are better here. It's not true. The law that governs mining in the U.S., so the mines in Nevada, new mines being built in out west for lithium and copper and other critical minerals, are governed by a law from 1872. The 1872 mining law, which was at the height of westward expansion and taking land from indigenous people and prospecting for mining in the western states, it's like a Wild West law that we still use today to govern mining. So, and the federal government gets no royalties from mining. We really have one of the worst mining governance in the world here in the U.S. So everywhere, though, we need to improve mining governance because these companies are very sophisticated with their lobbying tactics, with forms of regulatory capture, and we need to be kind of clear and transparent about that. On the other end of the supply chain is where we think about transportation policy. So what can we do differently? I already mentioned a great recent law passed by the Massachusetts State House, I believe, that increased taxes on the wealthiest, in part to fund education and public transportation.
No. If I may, they do not have the courage to raise taxes on anybody. It was the people of Massachusetts on a ballot question who led themselves.
Okay,
but go ahead.
Please. I stand corrected.
Okay.
That's better, though, because then it was a popular mobilization.
Indeed.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for the fact correction. But that type of thing is essential because we're in a cost of living crisis. And we can't expect households that are already struggling to, on their own, as I said, buy an expensive new asset and then say, what am I going to do with my regular gas car, right? We need programs that lower the cost of transportation, that make it more accessible and reliable, that also help people with the cost of the transition, and that give people more options. We see in every country in the world, you asked for other examples, in Europe, in East Asia, there were cities that were on track to being US level car ownership in the 80s and the 90s. Those cities said, hey, like, we need to control the pollution of this, the congestion, the traffic deaths as well. And a lot of those cities that today Americans love to visit and walk around, Paris, Amsterdam, Barcelona, they had much worse traffic issues 10 years ago, London as well. And now they have much more balanced transportation systems that people love to use. And I suggest that we think about that in our metropolitan regions in the U.S.
You know, Thea, when Bill McKibben is a regular on our show, and he never misses an opportunity to praise the work of Mayor Wu in this area. And I think he's regularly said she's the most environmentally forward-thinking mayor in America. You're even closer in Providence. Is she doing what people should be doing to advance goals of people like you?
I would say absolutely, and I don't want to get too granular lest I make another factual error. She has been inspiring. She ran on a Green New Deal platform, but she connected it locally, right? Sometimes these ideas feel very big, including climate change itself. She says climate change is a transportation issue. It is a housing issue. It is a land use planning issue, and we can do these things locally in ways that benefit people that live in Boston. And I think, she hasn't won every aspect of her platform, but she's absolutely bringing Boston closer to what a good climate action, at the municipal level looks like.
Thea, I know Jim asked you this before, but just to be clear, there is investigation of technologies that will make EVs less dependent on these very harmful mining techniques.
Yes.
Do we know how far off they are?
Yes, there's, for example, forms of mining that, as I said, use a lot less water. One of the issues in the Atacama Desert, where, again, 25% of our global lithium comes from, is that we're basically mining water. The lithium is suspended in brine. You take the brine out from underground. The freshwater aquifers are drawn down and affected by that. We know that there's technology that potentially, at least in a lab kind of pilot setting, uses a lot less water. What we need to figure out is how do we get companies that have invested in the old methods to switch to new methods? It's going to require regulation. It's going to require incentives, but also the public sector saying you have to do it this way, right? And so absolutely there's better technologies. It's just about getting these big companies to shift how they do their practices.
Trump is always talking about we're almost out of time here, but getting the minerals in Ukraine. What's the deal in Ukraine?
It's very concerning. So around the world, as well as in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as we already mentioned, in Ukraine and in other countries, Trump is forcing countries or kind of using his negotiating power, these very asymmetric deals that give U.S. companies access to their minerals. But the thing is, we barely know what Ukraine even has. All of those maps date to the Soviet era. There's no up-to-date information. Ukraine's been a war zone, right? And so, even what the reality of these deals beyond the bluster of I negotiated something is very unclear.
Hey, thank you very much for your time. We learned so much, and we really appreciate it.
We really
Congratulations on a terrific effort.
Thanks so much, Jim and Margaret. It was a pleasure to be here.
Hope you'll come back. Thanks, Thea. We'll see you soon.
We've been speaking with Thea Riofrancos, political science professor at Providence College and co-director of the Climate and Community Institute. Her new book is Extraction, The Frontiers of Green Capitalism. And thanks again to Thea Riofrancos. Coming up after the quick break, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral, will be with us. She's going to talk about the Insurrection Act and some bad acting right here in Boston. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR and 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The weekend is coming with stories.
I always knew that I had a voice that could make a difference.
Gardening.
Prune for health and appearance, not to try and control size.
And DIY delights.
There are these companies and they go viral because they'll spray something on the side of cedar and it just brightens it up and makes it look beautiful. But it doesn't actually add to the durability.
That's how we do weekends on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Bartlett Tree Experts, a scientific tree care company providing species-specific care for trees and shrubs for over 118 years. More at bartlett.com. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow. Live music from Boston Baroque, Sue O'Connell's there, a whole bunch of things. We're joined now via Zoom by Andrea Cabral. Andrea's the former sheriff of Suffolk County, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety. Hey, Andrea.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Hey, Andrea, thank you very much for joining us
Mike's
as always.
not on. It is now. Go ahead.
My mic is not on?
It is now, yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's start with the former director of the FBI, James Comey, pleading not guilty. There's a lot around this case. His lawyer, the FBI, and the perp walk and so forth. What's your take on what's going on?
Well, just so that people understand, most people have heard, obviously, that he ultimately has been indicted. We talked a few weeks ago about what precipitated that, and this context is really sort of important. So the U.S. attorney who was in charge of the original investigation is a guy by the name of Eric Siebert. He was the U.S. attorney that was in place. He did the investigation of Comey, which spanned lots of months, and that was essentially because Trump wanted an investigation of Comey done. He's been after Comey since Comey refused to cover up for him when he, in his first term, around, and I forget which official it was, but he wanted Comey to kind of look the other way on some malfeasance by, what is his name? Why can't I think of his name? The military guy. Anyway, in any event, Siebert did the investigation, ultimately determined that not only was there not enough to bring charges against Comey, there really wasn't even probable cause to make an arrest of Comey. And this was because they wanted Comey to be charged with lying to Congress about whether or not he had instructed a spokesperson to leak information about to the press. And supposedly this leaked information contained classified material. First of all, not only does the actual witness who was supposed to have had this information given to him, a guy by the name of Richmond, who's a professor, a university professor, not only does Daniel Richmond say, no, he didn't give me this particular information, there was no classified information involved at all. So people need to understand, in order for the federal government to be involved in a prosecution, there has to be a violation of federal law. And the very, it's not even a tenuous link, I would say it's a non-link to federal crime here, is supposed to be that this leak involved the wrongful dissemination of classified information. The investigation clearly showed that was not the case, right? Moreover, as Mr. Richmond says, no, he instructed me several times not to go to the media on ABC.
Can you just stop there for a second? When I read the story about this Richmond, who was supposed to be the star witness for the prosecution, who says exactly the opposite of what the case is about Comey. As you said explicitly, Comey said to me twice, do not talk to the press. Who's going to testify? Kash Patel? I mean, who's going to testify?
Pam Bondi.
They're actually, at this point, it appears to me, and we should talk a little if we have time, about what happened at Pam Bondi appearing before Congress.
That's next. We'll get to that.
Yeah. And it is so absolutely obvious and so pathetic. They only have an audience of one person.
That's totally true.
Trump does not care about whether or not there's anybody to testify. And Pam Bondi, who was the Attorney General of the United States, leading the Department of Justice in this country, only answers to him. And she expects everyone who works at the Department of Justice to only answer to him. She doesn't even care about her own reputation as a lawyer or anything else. All they all care about is pleasing him. So what he wants is to see Comey destroyed. What he wants is to destroy Comey's legacy, any credibility he hopes Comey may have had in bringing and participating in the investigation about him and his collusion with Russia in the first election, or anything else he has a problem with Comey on. So, that's what's going on here. It's not, people should stop thinking about what's happening in the Trump administration as in terms of, well, what happens when they get to trial? We need to understand they don't care. They figure by the time that happens, their control of the country will be complete, and it won't matter what anybody thinks. They don't care what anybody thinks. They don't care about the law, and they don't care about the rules.
By the way, the one thing we skipped over, Marjorie mentioned in passing,
FBI.
the FBI leadership wanted Comey, the former head of the FBI, led into the courtroom in shackles.
Yes, with
for his
large,
alleged crime.
beefy agents in full
That's a quote.
Outfits, including Kevlar vests and exterior wear, emblazoned with the FBI
And there was resistance.
logo. Yes, the supervisory special agent, he didn't want to do it. Other agents didn't want to do it. They ended up not doing it, but there was a hope that it would happen. So I guess a couple of the FBI agents were so upset by this.
They'll be gone in a few days.
They said no, and then now they've been suspended. At least one agent, just one I know of, was suspended for insubordination for refusing to do that.
Okay, moving on to Pam Bondi. I didn't watch the hearing live because we were on the air for most of this. I watched a lot of it afterwards. And yesterday I intended, but we ran over in time, to play all 1 minute and 45 seconds of Senator Adam Schiff, who Donald Trump said in a post to Pam Bondi that he wanted indicted along with Comey and Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. He summed up all the things she had refused to answer. And again, it was almost 2 minutes long. Here's just 36 seconds of Schiff's summary of what the Attorney General refused to answer in an oversight hearing. Here it is.
You were asked who or what role you may have played, or who played the role in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan paid taxes on the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked. A law degree, excuse me. You were asked, did you discuss indicting James Comey with the president? You refused to answer that question. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
And by the way, there are about 20 other examples that,
And by the way, he's a former federal prosecutor, so he has a law degree.
Yeah. And let me just say that I hesitate to say what I'm about to say when I was going to say this is the most disgraceful performance in front of Congress of any of his minions. But then there was Kavanaugh, and then there was Kash Patel, and then the fact that this woman is the chief law enforcement officer of the United States is just incredible. And I know you agree.
I don't know how, I can't even imagine. I don't know how people, career prosecutors who functioned under various different presidents and various different AGs can stay there. I genuinely don't. But here's the thing. In addition to everything that you and Marjorie just mentioned, her juvenile responses to their questions tell you a couple of things. First of all, when Senator Durbin was asking her specifically about Trump trying to militarize the streets of the cities that he doesn't like by sending the National Guard in, her response, as opposed to a substantive response or not, as the AG was, I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump.
Yeah, that's exactly what she said.
No one should have any doubt that the only person any of these cabinet secretaries care about is President Trump. They're not acting on behalf of the American people. But the other thing that's also pathetic about this is, and very telling and dangerous, is that they are making it very clear to the American people that they do not recognize the oversight of Congress. And I've been saying this for well over a year now. Mm-hmm. This is headed toward complete consolidation of power within the executive branch. The other two branches of government have either ceded their power or are being marginalized and rendered completely powerless by this executive branch. And this is being allowed to happen. So yes, she goes before Congress. They have a hearing with a variety, as you point out, Jim, of topics on which any other AG in the entire history of the country would have to sit and actually answer substantively the questions. And they basically have given the finger to Congress and are basically saying, we don't care what you ask. We're doing what we want to do. No one is stopping us. So this is what we're going to do. And I hope people are really aware of this happening because it's being allowed to happen. It's not happening organically. We're letting it happen.
So, Andrea Cabral, let's move on to something happened locally, these so-called street takeovers. They're happening around the eastern part of the state. There were some people in the South End. A police cruiser set on fire. And Randolph, these crowds swarmed around police cars during another one of these so-called takeovers. Do we know what this is? It sounds like an organized kind of event. What's going on here?
Well, I think they are organized events. From what I've been able to read, these are these sprung up basically during COVID because people weren't going anywhere and streets were empty. So they are these meetups, for lack of I don't mean to sort of underemphasize how dangerous they are, but they're meetups organized on social media where people show up and they have their cars, they have other motorized vehicles, they're in the middle of the street, they're doing donuts, they're, racing up and down streets, and crowds gather to watch this. If you film it, you can go viral on social media, so that's part of the lure. Part of it is, even if you don't go viral, you can show your friends that you were there and you witnessed it all or whatever it was. But when police come to break it up, because now, we're well past COVID, the streets are full of people. It's incredibly dangerous. It was always dangerous, but even more so now that we're not in the middle of a pandemic. And when police arrive, there is pushback to them breaking it up, which has resulted in police being injured. There is no reason for this to happen. This should not be this. Let's be unequivocal. These things should not be happening on residential streets. They just should not. There's just no question about it. And so, I agree with Mayor Wu and with Governor Healy. There should be no tolerance for this. This is not a protest where, the majority of people are protesting peacefully. There is no right to express yourself by racing on residential streets and endangering pedestrians, bicyclists, other people in cars, destroying property. There is no First Amendment right to do this. And the fact that it is increasingly happening across the country, we've had it happen in a few cities, and Boston's not the only one, in Massachusetts, but it's also happening across the country. It calls for, this is what task forces should be about. There shouldn't be a task force to decide which of Trump's enemies we can prosecute next, but federal and state task forces this is a great place for them to come together and share intelligence, city by city, state by state, region by region, because this gets organized on social media. You have to be very careful about not abusing your access to social media and not infringing on people's privacy. But within the rules, there should be evidence gathering. And it's the kind of thing that strikes me as if you can get to the heart of it and stamp out some of the bad actors, you can drastically reduce the amount that this happens, the number of times that this happens, simply because people will see that the detriment outweighs the benefit.
Yeah, there was also a attacks on police at this pro-Palestinian protest on Boston Common. One officer was apparently punched in the face by a protester who was arrested and got a broken nose. The judge, I think, held him on $10,000 cash bail. He was a student from Tufts University. So this makes you nervous in terms of the big protest that's supposed to take place August 18th.
Yes, and I think, there is it's so different. I sort of distinguish the police breaking up the street takeovers clearly from protests.
Yeah.
Police have to walk a delicate balance on protests. Protests are supposed to be peaceful. You can yell if you want to. You can even, call people names or whatever. You may be exercising free speech, but when it crosses the line into violence, that is a problem. And it's particularly fraught in this country, especially right now, where we've also had police officers behaving with excessive force toward protesters. So when protests are done, particularly on a political basis or because of something that's sort of happening nationally, if there are injuries and there's violence, you're always going to get both sides of the story, which is who started what when. And because violence can spring out in a variety of different places along a protest at a variety of different times and headed by various actors who run the gamut from people who are actually there to protest to people who are there to incite violence at the protest to the police. It is a very difficult thing to kind of parse through. That said, the First Amendment protects the right to protest, and nothing, including what the Trump administration wants and intends to do, should quell the right to protest. Also, violence that springs out in protests that harms protesters or harms police officers is also unacceptable, and that has to be investigated and prosecuted.
So before you go, what about the Trump administration? They're talking about invoking the Insurrection Act, which allows the president to send active duty troops to United States cities for law enforcement purposes. What do you think?
Well, I think I've been sort of talking about this for quite a long time as well. He has always wanted to do this. He knows that the road to dictatorship runs through militarization of America's streets and placing people in too much fear to protest him, to resist him, to allow him to have power. The Insurrection Act, which he couldn't tell you what is in the Insurrection Act. I doubt that he can spell the word insurrection. I'm very serious about that. He just knows that it contains the raw power to use brute force to subjugate the people who stand in his way. That is what he is interested in. And the idea that they are now seriously discussing it, I think they've always had an element of seriousness in discussing it, is merely the fruition of what it is very clear to me he would have liked to have done in his first term around the George Floyd protests, but there were enough people who understood the way government was supposed to function and the limits of presidential power that they kept him from doing it. He has clearly, as we just talked about with Pam Bondi and others, surrounded himself with people who have no restraint on him and will do anything he asks. So now the Insurrection Act is a real viable thing for this administration, and they will invoke it at the first a viable opportunity that they see.
You know what's incredible? The president keeps saying that Portland is burning down. Then they show the place where the ICE facility is, and there have been at night some stuff going on there at the ICE facility at night. During the day, it's rather calm. But it's this one block area. And
mostly old people, a lot of old people there,
it's
too.
All alone. Yeah. This is all, I mean, look at this. Look at it this way, Margie.
Burning down. He's just making it up.
He's making it up. Yeah. First of all,
shocking.
The President of the United States, except in very specific instances, the civil enforcement of the Civil Rights Act, where children were being pelted with rocks and spit and punches, trying to get a public education. That, when you need to have the National Guard go in to protect citizens who are just trying to exercise their rights, that's different, right? Invoking the Insurrection Act for this lie, which characterizes everything about the Trump administration. Presidents of the United States allow governors and local law enforcement to handle whatever violence is happening in their cities. Repeatedly, and Boston is no exception here, as Mayor Wu pointed out in Congress and has since to Tom Homans, crime statistics, crime is down. Governors are managing crime in their cities. And even if crime does spike, it is the job of the states to do that, not the federal government. He could care less who gets hurt in a state as a result of crime. He wants power over the states. And militarization is the way forward, and the Insurrection Act is one of the ways that he can get that power. People shouldn't be fooled into thinking that he either knows or cares about levels of crime in the states, because he's clearly ignoring the facts and lying about the level of crime in order to get what he wants.
Andrea Cabral, as always, see you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. Sorry, Andrea.
She's going to have to lie down after this for a few minutes.
I know. At least I didn't ask her about the Nobel Peace Prize.
But don't comment. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Speaking with former Suffolk County Sheriff and former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral. I'm sorry we raised her blood pressure there. After this quick break in ours, we talked with artist Victor Quinones, who also goes by Market27, about his amazing installation at the Rose Kennedy Greenway and also an exhibit at Boston University. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. This is BPR on 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Jennifer Lopez has always dreamed of being in a musical, and now that dream has come true.
These roles like this, for me and for people like me, don't come around every day.
I'm Elsa Chang. We talked to Jennifer Lopez about finally starring in her first musical ever, Kiss of the Spider-Woman, on All Things Considered from NPR News.
And if you find that you land in jail, a little
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Mass Humanities, presenting Voices and Votes, Democracy in America, a Smithsonian exhibition in Douglas, now through October 25th, in collaboration with Massachusetts 250, masshumanities.org. And MIT Federal Credit Union, offering a variety of certificate options to help members build emergency funds, plan for retirement, or save for the future. Learn more at mitfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow with live music from Boston Baroque, Sue O'Connell, Press Play. The Mayor Wu, will join us October 28th at the library for an hour from noon to 1. Joined now via Zoom by Brooklyn-based visual artist Victor Market27 Quinones. You may have seen or heard about his incredible installation of the Rose Kennedy Greenway near South Station. 12-foot pyramid of golden coolers with nods to immigrant identity, survival, and celebration. It also has an exhibit of original paintings, immersive installations, 3D sculpture works, and curated soundscapes on display through December 10th at Boston University. The English translation of which is not from here, not from there. And in addition to BU, I just learned this morning, Marjorie, although I'm not sure you can gain access, 2 of his works hang on the walls of the bedroom of Christopher Myers and Joanne Chang, of Myers and Chang, also of Flower.
Yeah.
Market27 can probably lead you on a tour of that. It's a pleasure to have you. Congratulations on your wonderful work. Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jim and Marjorie. It's an honor to be on the show.
Can you get us into Christopher and Joanne's place or what?
Yeah.
You know what? I think that can happen.
Yeah.
Okay,
we'll have a sleepover.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah, we'll sneak in there and do a quick tour. I'm sure he's got other things we can just be nosy and check out.
Well, let's start with what's going on at BU, not from here, not from there. Tell us what that's about.
So it's a solo exhibition. The gallery director, Lissa Kramer, had approached me almost 2 years ago about doing the solo exhibition at Boston University. Ni de aquí ni de allá is what is actually titled, and in Spanish, neither from here nor from there. It's something that a lot of people deal with dual identities that were born in another country but grew up in the U.S. And the exhibition deals a lot with having that dual identity, loving where you grew up, but also loving where you're from, and having a connection, an authentic connection to both places. It also speaks on the topic of immigration and indigeneity and some of the things that, millions of people have to think about on a daily basis living here in the U.S.
Because you came here at age 4, I believe.
From Mexico.
From Mexico?
Yeah. So from Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico, my family and I had migrated to Texas.
And you had to deal with losing your father over several times with his being deported.
Correct. At a young age, the youngest at 6, the first time I had even kind of put it together that he was deported because he was gone for a long time. And at that point, I finally understood what was happening. Happened a few more times in my young adulthood, but it's something that right now ICE is such a big topic, but it's not that my work is timely. It's just that it's something that's been going on.
Yeah.
Since the creation of this country. It's always been an issue, specifically for Latin culture as well.
I think it's safe to say, it's almost embarrassing, it's so obvious, that you have a little bit of a different view on immigrants than the savagery exhibited by the president. But when Marjorie just mentioned you grew up in Mexico till you were 4, we've talked a lot about the very few world leaders who have had the you-know-what to stand up to Trump and often prosper. Sheinbaum, the first woman to be president of Mexico, is in that very small group. What do you think of her?
I think at heart, she's a humanitarian first. Even before a feminist, she's very, very big on women's rights and has been a tremendous support to indigenous people in Mexico. But, she also cares about, all living creatures, and also cares about a lot of the things that this administration does not, which is, humanitarian laws, protecting nature, climate change. These are all things that are extremely important for her. And Mexico is thriving because of it. I wish we could say the same about the leadership in our country, but it's gotten, I feel like, 10 steps backwards since the last administration.
Tell us about the ice coolers on the Greenway, what you did and why you did it. I think we might have pictures
which
of them
everybody is talking about in this town, I should say.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
I'm so thankful for that. First I want to thank the New Commonwealth Foundation, New Commonwealth Fund. They were the major supporters to bring this to the Greenway. Also the Greenway with Audrey Lopez, the director at the Greenway, for hosting the exhibition, and Street Theory Gallery, who was also the supporter of bringing it there. It's 200 coolers, basically, stacked up in the shape of a over 20-foot tall pyramid. And out of those 200 coolers, 8 of them are facing South Station, and they're covered with clear acrylic. Each one of those coolers has, cultural objects, spiritual objects, and all these different things inside of it. And they're lined with all these cultural textiles from different countries. It's really a representation of our street vendors from all over the world. And when you think about major cities like New York, Boston, LA, Chicago, when people first come here and want to make an honest living, they rely on these coolers, and you see them in the subway stations, you see them on busy street corners. 90% of the time it's a mother with their child or their children selling water, fruit, anything that they can out of those coolers just to make an honest living. So when I was a kid, street vendors looked out for my family when my father was deported. And growing up, throughout my whole life, I've lived in a lot of different major cities, and I have seen this struggle and this hustle and this resilience my entire life. And, to this day, I just wanted to pay homage to that, community, that vulnerable community, and let them know that they're being seen and supported by creating this monument that honors them.
By the way, we're talking about something that's public, that's accessible to everybody.
Yes.
What's not accessible beyond Myers and Chang is what's over your right shoulder, which I can't stop looking at, is really beautiful. And for people watching on YouTube, could you, Market 27, could you describe what that work is behind you?
That's actually an older painting. It's just a painting that is part of the style that I created called Neo-Indigenous. And it's a mix of, some of the things that I grew up around, from, Mexican heritage to indigenous cultures, pop culture as well. So, that piece itself was inspired by a Solange song that she did a while back called Cranes in the Sky. So, I'm really glad you're looking at that image, because in Boston, there's a mural that was inspired by this painting at Underground Ink Block. You can see it right off of the highway when you're, taking 93 headed towards Logan Airport or South Station.
By the way, if I had done that, I want you to know, Margaret, I would not be saying it's just a so-and-so. I would not be saying just anything. I heard you with Jared Bowen the other day. You had you quoted David Bowie. Could you repeat what you said? And I'd love that. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I really love David Bowie's take on art and, and creativity. And what he was saying was that when you're an artist, you don't ever want to think about the audience or think about whether or not people are going to like the work. That you want to create work from a space within. So what he was saying is, when you go out into the water in the ocean and your feet can barely touch the ground, that's where you want to be. You want to feel uncomfortable. You want to feel, ambitious, and you also want to push yourself as an artist. But the second you start thinking about sales, who's going to buy the work, who's going to like it, that's when you tend to make the worst work. When it comes from a place of authenticity from within, that's when you tend to create the best work. And what people don't know about that quote, it came from an interview when they were asking him about what he thought about the music industry at the time and the artists that were creating work. And he was saying, unfortunately, like every other genre in music, once a corporate entity or a label gets a hold of an artist, they tend to control what it is they put out. And, most importantly, like they control what the radio stations play as well. So it becomes a commodity and not a lot less of an art form.
Well, we are so grateful to talk to you, and congratulations on what you're doing at BU and what you're doing at the Greenway. It's amazing stuff. Thank you, Margaret 27, for being with us.
Great to see you. And by the way, we're about to put up a photo of the two pieces on the wall of Myers and Chang's home.
Yep, there it is. There it is.
There's another one.
We've been speaking with multimedia artists. Yeah, that's right. Victor Canonis.
Heroes and childhood villains, those two pieces right there.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to check in with Colin Killick, Executive Director of the Autistic South Advocacy Network. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH. And GBH, that's it, youtube.com/GBH News.
The best way to support your GBH radio listening is by becoming a GBH sustainer. It takes just 2 minutes to enroll and a few dollars a month on your credit card. Small monthly contributions, huge impact. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Museum of Science, featuring exhibits for all ages, from indoor lightning storms to live animals to modern robotics and hands-on design challenges. More at MOS.org. And the Boston Globe, presenting the Globe Docs Film Festival, premiering new documentary films, bringing together filmmakers, journalists, and guests from around the world. In person and online, October 22nd through 26th. GlobeDocs2025.splashthat.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, head on Hour 3 of BPR. Trump and RFK's announcement linking Tylenol to autism is sowing confusion, but also misrepresents the lived experiences of millions of Americans living with autism. We'll speak with Colin Killick. He's the Executive Director of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Am I the A-Hole Day? Today's conversation involves those hazy few moments of peace right when you wake up in the morning. What do you do if your partner or roommate or radio co-host can't help but try to engage with you immediately about the news and politics first thing after you open your eyes before you've had your coffee? Are you a jerk for telling them to shut it? Or should we be a little bit more flexible if the people around us are just trying to engage and process the world on fire? Weigh in next in the third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Dale Willman. It's day 9 of the federal government shutdown, and as NPR's Deirdre Walsh reports, Democrats and Republicans remain far apart.
Top Republican and Democratic leaders remain deadlocked, with little signs of a way out. House Speaker Mike Johnson says his party did its job, but Democrats are more worried about political pressure from their base.
The people who are supposed to be protected are being completely cheated by Democrats in the Senate because they want to play politics.
The top Senate Democrat, Chuck Schumer, says Republicans are feeling pressure to extend health care subsidies that are expiring at the end of the year as part of any agreement.
They realize that the American people are on our side in wanting to fix this health care crisis, address it in a serious way.
But there are no serious negotiations on a compromise. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News.
Hamas and Israel have agreed to a tentative ceasefire. Under that deal, Hamas will release the remaining hostages in return for a release of Palestinian prisoners being held by Israel. Speaking at his cabinet meeting today, President Trump says the region will now be rebuilt.
Gaza is going to be slowly redone. You have tremendous wealth in that part of the world by certain countries, and just a small part of that, what they make will do wonders for Gaza, and I think you're going to see some tremendous countries stepping up and putting up a lot of money and taking care of things.
Palestinians in Gaza, meanwhile, are having mixed reactions to the impending ceasefire. Abu Bakr Bashir reports.
Ola Abu Nasser is displaced in a tent in central Gaza. She says she hugged her children when she heard the news about the ceasefire. She said, yes, we are happy, but it is wrong to feel so. Each one of us has many scars deep inside. She's one of the few survivors from her extended family after an Israeli strike on their building last year killed more than 130 members of her family. An NPR investigation found it was one of the deadliest Israeli strikes of the entire Gaza war. She says she fears Israel will resume the war after Hamas releases Israeli hostages. For NPR News, I am Abu Bakr Bashir.
Chip maker AMD has announced a deal to supply its chips to OpenAI. The chips will be used to build infrastructure for artificial intelligence applications. The agreement includes providing high-performance graphics chips for a total of 6 gigawatts of computing power for OpenAI's next-generation AI systems. China is now placing new restrictions on the export of rare earth minerals, and regulators are also extending controls over the use of those elements. Rare earth minerals are critical components of consumer electronics and medical imaging. They're also used in oil refining. Stocks are down across the board on Wall Street at this hour. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. After being accused of misusing campaign funds, Norfolk County Sheriff Patrick McDermott has to step down as the head of the Massachusetts Sheriff's Department. Globe reports that McDermott made the announcement yesterday, the first day of a planned Sheriff's Association summit in Lenox. His statement says he was stepping aside to focus his full attention on the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office and the dedicated men and women who serve there. No word yet on who will be the new head of the Massachusetts Sheriff's Department. Beaches and trails at the Cape Cod National Seashore remain open during the federal shutdown, but the visitor centers are closed. Many employees have been furloughed. David Bernstein, president of the Friends of the Cape Cod National Seashore, says the furloughs mean behind-the-scenes science is not happening.
Any studies going on for erosion or any studies going on for if somebody digs something and they find bones, there's 6,000 years of people in that park. The archaeologist is there to help out, and he's not working.
He says the best thing the public can do right now to help during this shutdown is to please pick up any trash they see accumulating in the park. That was a problem during the last shutdown. In sports, the Bruins have their big home opener tonight against the Blackhawks. Thursday night football, it's the Eagles at the Giants. And in the forecast, sunny and cool today, high in the mid to upper 50s. Bring those outside plants inside tonight. We've got a frost warning in effect, low in the 30s. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with live music from Boston Baroque. They're fantastic. Sue O'Connell, our media maven, and more. We're also going to be joined, but not until October 28th, for a monthly, well, actually, it's just her monthly appearance. The mayor of Boston.
It's her monthly appearance.
It is her monthly appearance, but it's not like tomorrow. It's October 28th, but she's also going to be at the Boston Public Library from noon to 1. Hello again, Jim.
Hi there, Marjorie. How are you?
Excellent.
For how much the Trump administration talks about autism, he seems to care very little about people with autism. That's one of the arguments of our next guest, who says things like Medicaid cuts may only make it harder for people with autism to get support. And saying that autism destroys family, as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., has, only increases the stigma. Here's Trump and RFK Jr. at that White House press conference. The one, the Don't Take Tylenol press conference from a few weeks ago.
It's out of control. Autism, out of control.
Historically, NIH has focused almost solely on politically safe and entirely fruitless research about the genetic drivers of autism. And that would be like studying the genetic drivers of lung cancer without looking at cigarettes.
Colin Killick is the executive director of the Washington, D.C.-based Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, a nonprofit run by and for people with autism. He joins us now. Colin, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I've been a WGBH listener for a long time.
Oh, that's great. Well, you have a Boston connection.
You.
We'll get to that.
Very much. You have one of our Eton crank radios, that you can crank up and listen to. That's one of our big sellers. Anyway, so Colin, what did you think of what the president and RFK Jr. had to say there?
I mean, it's absurd. It's not out of character. It's in line with the way they've been talking about autism since this administration began. But it's really, it's unscientific, it's dangerous, and it contributes to stigma about our community.
How much do we know about causes of autism? Because RFK Jr. is off on his own non-scientific approach to virtually everything. What do we actually know based on science?
So, I mean, what we know is that autism is a developmental disability, right? People are born autistic. They are, and, it is something inherent to who a person is, the way the brain develops, the way people think. We don't know exactly what causes it. We don't have like an autism gene to point to, but we know it's genetic for a variety of reasons, including the fact that it runs in families. Mm-hmm. I see that myself, right? I'm autistic, and 2 of my 4 first cousins are also autistic, right? There's a lot of autism in my family. It's possible that there are factors that could happen during pregnancy that might increase the odds of someone being autistic. But this Tylenol thing is based on a single review paper, right? One paper, which was looking at a bunch of other studies, only some of which found any association between autism and acetaminophen, none of which were very strong. The best review paper we have on this, which found that the apparent correlation between acetaminophen and autism disappears once you control for whether the individual has autistic siblings. And even if there were a correlation between acetaminophen and autism, it doesn't mean acetaminophen causes autism. For instance, it could well be that fever during pregnancy increases the odds of autism. That's just a pure supposition, but you would see exactly the same correlation under that circumstance. And if that were the case, getting people to not take acetaminophen during pregnancy would actually make the problem worse. But the primary thing we know is that I was in the room when RFK Jr. made his remarks. He just said, outright, there has to be an environmental cause. There has to be an environmental cause. And so they're working backwards. They decided on the answer to begin with and then went looking for evidence to support that answer and haven't really found much.
In one of the stories I read today, in anticipation of talking to you, a young person with autism called their mother to ask the mother if she'd taken Tylenol during pregnancy. And you had to feel terrible for that mother, just like years ago. And I remember this, and you certainly know about it, that autism was blamed on cold and unemotional mothers. So I think that's a hard thing for mothers.
Yeah, the refrigerator mothers, right?
Refrigerator mothers, yeah.
I've made that point in some of these, right? And that's a great illustration of the fact that, again, it's kind of jumping to conclusions, is that we now know that certainly the idea of autism as in some way like psychiatric, right? Like being caused by the way you're parented is absurd. But, these symptoms have existed for a very long time. It is that we've understood them a great deal more. And one thing is that the fundamental falsehood at the core of this is that they talk about an autism epidemic, right? And they say there has to be some kind of environmental cause because so many more people today are diagnosed with autism than used to be diagnosed with autism. So something has to be causing that. The fact that more people are diagnosed with autism today does not mean that there are more people who actually are autistic today. What it means is we are doing a better job of identifying autistic people in the population. There have been autistic people as long as there have been people. But, once upon a time, you would get diagnosed with childhood schizophrenia, right? And possibly institutionalized, right? Someone like me, I got diagnosed late in life. I was 28. If I'd been diagnosed as a child, I probably would have been diagnosed with Asperger's, right, which we used to be treated as a separate diagnosis. That got merged into autism because what we sort of realized as science marched on is that there was no clear delineation between the two, and it didn't make any sense to have multiple distinct diagnoses for slightly different manifestations of the same thing.
Turning to Colin Killick, let me just say, Margaret, he's the executive director of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. I'm sorry.
And Colin, you're also an example of the wide diversity. I mean, some people with autism have a lot of difficulty speaking or communicating. And then people like you that obviously I would never look at you and think, and I would never guess that you had any kind of autistic diagnosis or even Asperger's diagnosis. So there is this huge diversity.
Yeah, there's a wide spectrum of functional impairment and of support need, right? And yeah, I'm at the low support need end of things. I've never claimed to be, the sort of the prototypical autistic person. But there are things that I struggle with. I have substantial issues with executive functioning and memory and that, and I've gotten therapy and medication and other things for those. But yeah, autism, you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, and it's important to stress that our organization doesn't at all we're not saying that there aren't autistic people who have substantial levels of impairment performing many different kinds of tasks. Of course there are. And there are autistic people who are non-speaking. There are autistic people who are intellectually disabled as one of their autism symptoms. And that obviously causes substantial challenges. And that's why it's critical that autistic people have access to services that are customized to their level of need. Those are the kinds of services that Medicaid pays for. And as you alluded to, those are the kind of services that are going to become harder to access as a result of this administration's Medicaid cuts.
Well, that is an appropriate place to say that something is being destroyed, but that wasn't what RFK Jr. had to say back in April. This is after the CDC released a report marking an increase in numbers of people with autism. Here's Kennedy.
This is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure.
What did you think when you heard Kennedy say those things there, Colin?
It's eugenics. This is the fundamental talking point, right? When you say that a child has been destroyed, what you are saying is that they're gone, that there is no hope for them, that their life is not worth living. That is what it means. It is saying, in essence, that person no longer exists. And that's not true. And it's certainly not true that their family has been destroyed, right? That it is gone, that it is devastated. Yeah, it is incredibly hard to be a parent of an autistic child with high support needs, absolutely. But that does not mean that child's life is not worth living. It doesn't mean that autistic people can't experience joy. It doesn't mean that autistic people don't have opinions. It doesn't mean that autistic people are incapable of love, any of these things. And it doesn't mean we give this laundry list of activities that autistic people supposedly can't do. One, it's not true that autistic people, including autistic people who are intellectually disabled, including autistic people with high support needs, many of them can do those things. Even if they can't, it doesn't mean that they have been destroyed. When I hear that word, I think, okay, we'll give up on that person, right? We're giving up on that person. And if someone has been destroyed, then why bother providing them with services, right? Why bother ensuring they can live in the community? Why try and protect their rights, right? If they're already gone. And fundamentally, we know that that's not true.
By the way, I mentioned you spoke about the cuts in Medicaid and what they do to people with autism. Despite the professed concern, the deep concern that Trump and Kennedy have, the administration also canceled $31 million, you obviously know this, but I don't know if the public does, in autism research grants, which I think speaks to their deep commitment to helping people with autism. The one thing I don't know if was about to say I want to be fair. I don't know if I want to be fair to them. The public at large, it seems to me, has huge misconceptions about autism and people with autism. Could you tell us what your organization does? And I assume part of your mission is to do public education kind of work. Fill us in, Colin.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's kind of in the name, right? Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, right? There is this mantra in the disability rights community. There's nothing about us without us, right? The decisions should not be made about our community without our input. And historically, the discussion around autism did not include autistic people, right? It was policymakers and it was doctors and it was, and it was family members, and family members' voices are obviously critically important. But our organization said autistic people need to be part of this. Autistic people need to have a say in the public's perception of autism and in our government policy around autism. And a lot of the messaging out there was appalling. I mean, organizations, I'm not going to name them here, but like putting out videos saying, the only reason I haven't, with a parent saying, the only reason I haven't killed my autistic child yet is because my non-autistic child needs to have their parent around for them, right? That's an appalling thing to say. But so the first thing, we do public education. We put out materials that are like, so you've been diagnosed as autistic, or so your child has been diagnosed as autistic, right? What does that mean, right? We also do a lot of putting out materials in plain language, right? So that not just autistic people, but all people with intellectual disabilities. And it's important to say that we see ourselves as an intellectual disability organization broadly. Like all of our employees are autistic, but we do a lot of work in service of the entire population of people with ID. And so a lot of what we do is creating materials in plain language, right? Explaining, this is what this Supreme Court decision means, or this is what Medicaid cuts may mean to you, or working on a thing right now about heat emergency, saying this is how you keep yourself safe when temperatures outside get too high. So that people who have some degree of intellectual or cognitive impairment both can access resources to keep themselves safe, but also can express themselves, can self-advocate. Because someone having an intellectual disability doesn't mean they don't have an opinion, that their voice doesn't matter. They should be able to contact their member of Congress. They should be able to tell their story and say, this is what matters to me. And their member of Congress needs to respect their voice and their opinion the same way they would any other constituent. So we do a lot of that. And then we do a lot of direct advocacy, public policy development, interfacing with the government, trying to shape autism policy. Certainly that looks different now than it has in the past, but we continue to get our voice out there. And then we do a lot of media, things like this, trying to share the perspective of autistic people about autism.
By the way, the website for the organization is autisticadvocacy.org. I'm sorry.
Well, it also enables people to join a community of people with autism or Asperger's. I mean, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and having access to autistic community is so important. A lot of autistic people, they don't have that connection. They feel wrong somehow. They feel, what's wrong with me? Because that's the dominant narrative, is what's wrong with me, right? Meeting other people who think the way you think, who see the world the way you do, and also getting to realize that autism is not purely about deficit. It is a different way of thinking. And yes, certainly being autistic comes with challenges. It makes certain things harder, but it also, it can come with benefits. It can mean, that certain kinds of things may be easier for you. It may mean that certain kinds of creativity come to you. It varies hugely person to person, but it changes being part of a community and knowing that there's a history, knowing that there are things you can be proud of that autistic people have done. It really changes things. And that's true across, my career before this organization was in general disability rights advocacy, and just meeting other disabled people of all stripes and learning that there was such a thing as a disability rights movement completely changed my life, and it's changed a lot of people's lives.
Colin, you mentioned you were diagnosed at 28. So how did that happen? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I think I had the experience that's common for a lot of people, and it's one of the other reasons that autism diagnosis rates have come up is I had this kind of cavalcade of diagnoses throughout my life, right? I have severe fine motor impairment, right? And so I was initially diagnosed with dysgraphia. And it turns out dysgraphia might even be a symptom.
What does that mean, fine motor impairment? What does that mean?
My fine motor skills don't work very well. I can't tie shoelaces. I can't use chopsticks. I can't write by hand.
Okay.
And so that led to a diagnosis of dysgraphia. And then thinking, well, maybe that's related to ADD, or maybe that's related to other conditions, executive function disorder, et cetera. And finally, when I was 28, right after I'd finished grad school and I was still on Harvard health insurance, I was like, okay, I can get them to pay, go see a neuropsychologist. And she put me through this battery of tests and it came at, okay, what's the common factor connecting all of these disparate things? Turns out it's autism.
Wow. So you had the insurance that would cover that. Otherwise, you would have had to go and find someone and pay for it yourself?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great example of like access, not just access to treatment, but access to diagnosis is often profoundly inequitable, right? Not everybody can get it.
Colin Killick from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. We've talked, I don't think we even had to bring it up. People could have guessed that the federal government was not providing the support that people with autism need. Are state governments that are more caring in general doing enough on the autism front to provide the support that people across the spectrum need, or no? And if they're not, which I assume they're not, what are the holes that most need filling, Colin?
I mean, I think it really depends place to place. I certainly think Massachusetts has been one of the better states on this historically. The waiver program is pretty good there. I think time is going to tell, right? Like as federal funding becomes more restricted, our state's going to maintain health, home, and community-based services that people with disabilities rely on, because these are optional services, right? States don't have to pay for these. And so are they going to do that, even if it takes putting state money in? But I think the big things are, for autistic people, a couple of things that states could be doing better, including Massachusetts. One is access to what's called augmented and alternative communication, AAC. So
what's that mean?
So when you say, there's this phrase for autistic people who are nonverbal, right? We tend to say, non-speaking. And the reason for that is just because someone can't speak out loud, that doesn't necessarily mean they can't communicate. And so these AAC devices, which is sometimes a freestanding, like a customized device, sometimes it's a thing that runs on an iPad, et cetera. But these are programs or devices that allow someone with the right training, you can't just put it in somebody's hands, to communicate through typing, through pressing buttons, clicking on icons, et cetera, pointing to things. Sometimes people who were thought totally, incapable. I know people who are entirely non-speaking, who've gotten advanced degrees through the use of AAC. And so, making sure that every autistic person who has speech issues can get access to AAC for free could make a huge difference. We don't know how many people who are currently thought to be incapable of certain kinds of communication could actually communicate with that access. The other thing is just making sure that autistic people, especially those with intellectual disabilities, have the same choice to live where they live as everybody else. It used to be that people with all kinds of disabilities, but especially developmental disabilities, got institutionalized, got stuck in places like Fernald, right, which has now been closed down for a number of years. These days, a lot of autistic people, particularly those with intellectual disabilities, live in group homes, right? And group homes really run the gamut in terms of quality and in terms of level of restrictiveness, right? Some are genuinely replicate living with roommates, except with more supports. Some are institutions in miniature. And we've done a lot of work around things like the settings rule, critical federal regulations, ensuring people's rights in those kinds of group home settings. But it's very difficult for someone with an intellectual disability to be able to live independently often, because it's getting the housing paid for is the challenge, right? If you're in a group home and you're getting your support services and your housing from the same place, then Medicaid can pay for housing, right? Medicaid can't just pay for your rent. Massachusetts has a thing called the Alternative Housing Voucher Program, right, for people with disabilities with broad strokes. If that were expanded, right, and there was a push so that people with intellectual disabilities had the option of live in your own apartment and get your support person paid for by Medicaid, somebody who could come in and work just with you, that could quite literally open doors for a lot of people in our community to have the same choice in where they live as everybody else.
One last thing from me, Colin. We know that the connection between autism and vaccines has been debunked, but lots of people, I don't know the numbers, but significant numbers of people still believe it. But I have some empathy for parents who have a baby and the baby seems regular at 6 months, regular at 8 months. They go in at 18 months, they get the MMR vaccine, and they think that the baby changes after that. What do you say to those parents that are still blaming the MMR vaccines
Yeah, I think it's, I get it. On the one level, I absolutely get it, because it's hard we live in an ableist society. Yeah. And it's hard to look and see that you have one future planned for your child, and then it turns out that their future is going to be different. And they're going to have to deal with a lot of barriers, some of them intrinsic to their condition, some of them the result of bad societal policies and structures that could be changed. And it's natural to want to blame someone. It's natural to just want to say somebody did this to my kid and they need to be held accountable. But the thing is, we have to believe in facts. We have to look at analyses. This has been studied to death. It has been analyzed over and over and over again. And there is just no data at all to suggest that vaccines cause autism. I mean, it's an empirically answerable question. They either do or they don't. And the truth is they don't. And at this point, all spending more time and effort and money on vaccines and autism does is it takes time and money and effort away from things that could actually help autistic people. That's what we say about research. We want more research on things that would actually help the autistic people who are alive today. And that's a lot of the research that got cut, right? They cut a program to help autistic people find jobs in STEM, right? They cut a program that funded a suicide hotline for autistic people, right? They funded a program to help make those kinds of diagnostic assessments, like the one I got, better, that was based on actually incorporating the lived experiences of autistic people, right? All this research that would really benefit our community, that's what got slashed. And I think I would say to those parents, I get it. Your kid's life is really hard. You've been put in a difficult position. But if you can, try to move away from what did this to my child and more to what can be done for my child to help them live the best life that they can.
Colin, we're really, really glad to have talked to you and met you. We hope to come back. Thanks so much for your time.
Oh, anytime, please. I'd love to. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much for joining us. We've been speaking with Colin Killick, Executive Director for the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. If you want to get info about this program, go to autisticadvocacy.org. That's autisticadvocacy.org. Colin, thank you very much again. Coming up after this quick break, this is our Am I or Who is the A-hole segment. How long should you have to wait in the morning before reminding your partner that the world is falling apart? It's time for another round of our thought-provoking, very highbrow Thursday afternoon segment. Am I the A-hole? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, a new report breaks down the budget pressures local governments face across the state. Wheelchair users in Massachusetts say repair delays are leaving them stranded, and they're pushing for changes on Beacon Hill. And in Worcester, a bold new project aims to play every single work by Johann Sebastian Bach. Hear all about Oktoberfest and all of today's headlines starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the DeMoore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University, where MBA and master's degree students can build vital business skills through experience. Learn more at northeastern.edu/. And the Museum of Science, featuring Perception Playground, on exhibit through October 26th, and showcasing illusions and effects that reveal the secrets of human perception. More at mos.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH is back at the library tomorrow with live music from Boston Baroque, Sue O'Connell, Press Play, and something else. Mayor's with us on October 28th at the library, so mark your calendar or whatever you do. So for listeners who've been writing to Jamie to complain this show has become far too high-minded, too sophisticated, too NPR, this segment is for you.
That's right.
Yes, it's time once again to decide who, myself excluded, is this week's a-hole. Here's the alleged, and we say alleged, we don't know if these are real. They're in real publications. We just don't know if they're real.
This one sounds real to me.
It does too. Actually, I was going to say that.
Yeah, it's got the ring of truth about it, Jim.
Here's the alleged real-world scenario. A husband and wife are struggling with two slightly different Sunday morning routines. The husband likes to get up at 6 to watch cable news. His wife writes like a Labrador, What does that mean, like a Labrador?
He's big and furry, I guess.
Okay. While she prefers to catch a few winks, takes things slow, sort of herkle-durkle in the morning.
That's right.
The news can be so bleak, and while she appreciates staying up to date, she'd rather read the headlines on her phone or newspaper at her own pace when she wants to, at least after she has her first cup of coffee. Am I right so far?
You are correct.
Okay, fine.
Yes, you are.
On a particular Sunday morning, though, as the wife is beginning to stir, her husband can't resist coming over to talk about the day's latest news disaster. When she reminds him how it makes her anxious, her news Labrador, that'd be her husband, can't bear to hold it in, and the disconnect makes for a very tense start to their Sunday. The number is 877-301-8970. Again, 877-301-8970 to call or text. Is the a-hole the Labrador, the husband, news-loving husband, or the wife who snaps at him for simply trying to engage and be present? And wait, and what's the acceptable hour to wait before tuning in to what's going on around you? If your answer is anytime later than 11... you're in the wrong place.
Well, as the story says, they've got this open living space kind of deal. So he's got the TV news on at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and she says it increases her anxiety. You hear the TV news, obviously. You hear the horrible commercials that go with the TV news. Yeah. So you're trying to get up, have a peaceful Sunday morning. It's probably their day off, they're not going to work. Yeah. And she's got to listen to this TV going on all the time. As she says, like a permanent soundtrack, and I think that's a bit of a problem. And if he'd be better off if he waited. He needs to rush in and tell the latest thing on the news. The latest thing on the news. She doesn't want to hear the latest thing on the news, and he gets upset because she doesn't want to hear the latest thing on the news. I mean,
so you think Labrador is the a-hole?
I do.
Okay.
I do, because I think how many conversations have you had in the last week from people who say, I can't take it anymore, Jim, I have to tune off. You want to talk about Donald Trump all the time, which
we have a fight
people.
almost every. By the way, we should say inside baseball. Almost every morning we have a fight. I want to start the show with the latest Trump goings on, and you say we can't do this every single day.
That's right.
And you know what? We can do it every single day. And if it turns out she's upset because he got up at 6 to turn the TV on and it's playing in the room, you know what you should do? Get up at 5. And so I'm serious. The world is falling apart. And if he, frankly, is kind enough and engaged enough to want to share this in limited portions with his wife, I understand it's upsetting. That's the state of the world.
Let me move on from this particular a-hole situation to a situation that I think we've all had in recent days, and people are very upset about the state of affairs. There's a lot of anxiety in the country right now.
Correct.
So say you're going out to dinner with your spouse or your family members or whoever it is, and you say, I don't want to talk about Donald Trump and the state of the world during dinner. Can we not do that, please? Talk about something else. And somebody insists on talking about Donald Trump, whether they think he's a jerk or whether they think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, or just in conversations with your friends. If somebody doesn't want to talk about something because it upsets them,
well, the other person does want to talk about it, and it's important to them, and it should be important to everybody. You're acting like everybody doesn't want to talk about it.
6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, talking about the Insurrection Act.
I do.
And whether Donald Trump is going to put federal troops in Portland, and whether
if I thought you were up, I'd call you at 6, by the way, to talk about it.
Whether James Comey is going to be hauled into court in shackles.
My attitude about this is, in general, you should be totally respectful of other people's desires. Not when the world's about to fall apart in 10 minutes. When the world's this guy's like Paul Revere, essentially in his own house. He's sounding the alarm. And I understand it's unpleasant, but you know what's even more unpleasant? The state of the world.
Okay, so Jim, in the Jim Browdy estimation, can you get an hour free of Trump a day, or maybe 15 minutes free of Trump a day?
You want a serious answer?
Yeah.
When I don't mean this as a joke. When she's by herself, which I'm sure she is during the day, it's fine. She's in a relationship with a guy who believes that it is important for people to stay up to speed. I'm serious. I don't mean this as a joke. By the way, Jamie sends a note and says, I can't speak to my husband in the morning because I'm busy responding to Jim's frantic texts about the world on fire. And you know what he is at the end of those texts? Informed. That's what you are, Jamie.
Okay. All right. We have a call here on our phone system that's in and out.
Wait a second. Before you do that, here's Zoe's note saying, I can't speak to my partner in the morning because I'm busy responding to Jamie's frantic texts about Jim's frantic texts. So there is a spillover effect.
I have my phone turned off.
I know I did. And she didn't even know she turned it off. Carolyn Saugus, you are first on BPR. Who is the a-hole?
The guy with the TV is
Absolutely.
the a-hole.
Why?
Because he's like Chicken Little. He can listen to the news. He doesn't have to run around announcing it. Let her sleep. There's no reason for her to interfere with her sleep. And if they're in a shared space, let him get earphones or earplugs so he can listen to the TV without
Carol,
disturbing
if
her.
I may, don't go away. Chicken Little said the sky was falling. It was not. The Labrador husband says the sky is falling, and it is. There's a big difference. The sky is falling on top of all of us. How about that?
But if you can't do a whole lot about the sky falling on you, why get so upset about it? He doesn't have to get everybody upset. Let him be upset.
Well,
that's right. You need a break.
Misery likes company. We got it,
It's why
Carol.
people watch the
Carol,
British
thanks.
baking show and those soothing TV shows.
Well, she can watch a British baking show whenever she wants.
He's got the TV on to wherever.
What is he doing
CNN
so horrible?
or MSNBC or maybe Fox News. Who knows? I mean,
You know what he's doing?
You can hear
He's
the
sharing
television.
the news with her in the morning. It is not like he's like making you go whatever.
Some people think that when you're in the company of somebody else who doesn't want to watch TV, you turn the TV off.
This is different. No, I'm serious. This is a totally different thing.
Jim wants
Do you
a
think this
24/7
hysteria. Is America in crisis?
Yes.
Is democracy at risk?
Yes.
So we should keep it to ourselves. Or share it with people we care about.
Well,
you're laughing because you don't have an answer to
I think
this.
maybe you could wait till 6:15 on a Sunday morning instead of 6 o'clock in the morning so fast. Everybody is saying that the husband is the a-hole. Panic and anxiety is very real, but he needs to respect her need to disengage. As usual, lots of people every week.
Can I say one more thing? When you are anxious because you are paying attention in the news, what's the one thing that reduces your anxiety? I'll tell you what it does for mine. Talking about your anxiety with other people. That's all this guy's trying to do. He's
Jim,
not trying to torture his wife.
I'm talking about it all day. It has not made me any less
Well,
anxious.
you're an exception. I would say you're probably an exception.
I babysat my grandkids a couple of weeks ago, and that was the first time because one of them is a little bit of a thing. He just learned to walk, so you got to chase him all the time. He's a little bit over a year old, so you got to chase him all the time. Yeah. And I was so busy chasing the kids and making sure one didn't strangle the other. I didn't think about Donald Trump for at least 12 hours. And it was great.
Yeah, well, most one-year-olds are not talking about Donald Trump. I don't think that's really the issue. By the way, I should say to you in advance.
You know what he told me?
What's
the
that?
one-year-old? He's going to win the Nobel Prize.
I know. By the way, if he does win the Nobel Prize tomorrow morning, Margie will be off for the next month or two. So just in advance, Susan and Merrimack.
The Nobel Peace Prize, we should say, because he's
not going to win
I think
the
of
physics
the word
prize.
Peace, there's the image that comes to mind.
Donald
Trump. He is one peaceful guy.
Susan and Merrimack, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for calling. Who's the a-hole?
Good afternoon, Jim and Marjorie. Definitely the husband is the a-hole here.
My God. Why?
You've got to respect people's boundaries, and I'm sure this woman isn't totally, dissociated from what's going on. She just doesn't want to hear it 24/7, and particularly first thing in the morning when she's trying to sleep. So he should switch to a news source that he can get on the radio, put in some headphones, and give her some peace.
Yeah, put on some headphones. Why not get headphones?
No, don't,
Everybody
Susan,
has
don't
headphones
go away.
now.
I'm going to try on you what I tried on Marjorie unsuccessfully. She has needs, which is to zone out for a while. And he has needs. His needs are he needs to talk to somebody or share this bad news with somebody, but nobody cares about him.
Well, I think maybe what she should do is what I do with my husband.
What's
because
that?
he can go off on stuff like this.
Yeah.
I tell him he has 15 minutes.
Oh,
to get it all out.
You have 15 minutes. Go.
Yeah, put the timer on. And then when the buzzer goes off, that's it.
Shut up. Susan, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
One of the texters makes a great point, Debbie in New Hampshire. If he's watching cable news, the same story is going to be repeated every 15 minutes or even every 5 minutes. So, the wife can see it when she gets up. You ever notice that if you watch, like if you put on the news at 6 o'clock in the morning, the same thing is going on at 8 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it's the exact same thing.
What's your point? What is your point?
Well, because it's the same thing over and over and over again. You've watched one show, you've watched them all. That's why I try to limit myself to one show.
You do?
Yes, just one show. It's enough. I had to read the other things, but one show is enough because it's all the same.
877-301-8970. If you just tuned in, there's this husband. The wife refers to him as the Labrador. I still don't quite get that.
I think because he kind of looks like a Labrador. He's kind of like a Labrador retriever, kind of got slobbering a little
drooling.
bit, kind of lumbers.
Well, if her husband is drooling at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, that's a problem.
Labradors, they eat everything.
He gets up at 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. He has the TV on, talking about the horrible news of the day, which is the only news of the day these days. She gets up. She wants a break. She wants to be able to do coffee.
She wants to have her coffee, too. That's very important
I understand
to her.
that. You can have coffee and listen at the same time.
To have her coffee before he starts.
So who is the a-hole? The husband who obviously has great need to talk to somebody about the stressful, horrible news, or the selfish wife who has decided that she doesn't want to hear any of it. She just wants to have her cup of coffee.
Oh, the Labrador is the problem, says another texter. But Petco offers training classes on Sunday morning, so you can send the husband Labrador down there to take some classes.
Shri in Leominster, welcome to the show. Hi, Shri. Hey.
Hi, it's Charisse.
Charisse, I'm so sorry. Hi.
No, that's okay. Hi. So I am calling with a different perspective.
Please.
I am the executive director of a mental health organization, and we talk a lot about regulating our nervous systems. So I have to say, the husband is the a-hole, but I also have to say that I could be the a-hole, because in my marriage, I have to be very careful to say, hey, look, I really want to talk about this. My husband's like, I've had enough today, Charisse. So I get it, but we all have to control our nervous systems. Otherwise, we'll all be unhinged.
Well, how do you do that, though? How do you do that, though? I mean, by the way, I often feel one of the reasons I love doing this show is you're able to talk about things that cause you great stress with pretty smart, caring people. What do you do if you have that need and you don't have a show? You just have a family. How do you shackle that thing?
So I'll tell you right now, Jim, about half my therapy sessions every 2 weeks has the word Trump in it. So I talk to my therapist, and she gives me 20 minutes, and I just go off. And then I come back, and I'm totally fine.
It's true. It's true. It's like I've said this a million times, but I hunger for the days when the president was not living in your brain. It's like he's in your head, and you can't get him out.
Freddy Krueger, honestly.
Yeah.
Hey, Charisse, you're great. We're really glad you called. Thanks so much.
Who was talking about the joy, joy is resistance to this whole thing? I forget.
What does that mean?
That living your life joyfully and having fun and doing great things is a form of resistance. Because it's almost like he wants to beat us all down.
Because he is in your head.
This is what the wife is trying to do. She's trying to do some resistance, at least before she has her morning coffee on Sunday at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he's just pounding into her head.
How about the halfway thing that person mentioned a minute ago, that she gives her husband 15 minutes? Yeah. No, I'm serious.
Get a little timer out your phone.
This woman is not giving the Labrador anything.
Go off.
How about that? How about she says to him, you have 15 minutes, after which I want to drink my coffee, and we could discuss this further later in the day. I'm serious, by the way.
Well, I think the opposite. I think the opposite should be, let her have her cup of coffee in peace, then he can have his 15 minutes. Okay. How's that?
All right, 877-301-8970 is our number. The phones are sort of working.
Listen to this.
What's that?
My husband gives me the double whammy. He's got the TV news on, and he's watching videos on his phone at the same time. Weird. It's maddening. I mean, don't you ever think about that? You resent it, how much you're going to read about this guy?
Yes. I mean, it is everywhere all the time. And that is, I mean, we've said this 1,000 times, as have others. That's the brilliance of Flood the Zone. You can never escape Trump and Trumpism. You can't.
Oh, one of the texters says a different interpretation of Labrador. Labrador, he goes to fetch the news and brings it back to her.
I like that.
Isn't that cute? Yeah.
Which is a Labrador? What are they? They're big, right?
Yeah, they're big. They're American Labradors and English Labradors. I forget which one is bigger. They can be black or brown or yellow. They're great dogs.
They are?
But they eat everything. And they're horrible in the first few months of life. I mean, they'll
How do you know this?
Because I know a lot of people with labs. And they're, they eat the fall river turkey.
They eat the what?
I saw Ruth from Fall River. I said fall river turkey. They don't eat the fall river turkey. They eat any turkey. Haven't you ever heard stories from your friends that have a Thanksgiving turkey on the kitchen counter, and then the lab eats the whole thing?
Do you know what I made? By the way, I meant to tell you this because I was going to bring you. I made Fall River meatloaf last night, and I'm thinking of having Fall River mashed potatoes with it tonight. What is it?
No, you know what we eat in Fall River? Chorizo and linguiça. That's what we eat.
By the way, how great.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my
Chorizo
God.
pizza.
Ruth in Fall River, you are next on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. First-time caller, long-time listener.
Thank you.
Both of those things. Hi.
Hi. I think the husband is the a-hole.
Apparently.
Only because I feel like being bombarded with such bad news every day puts kind of all of us into freeze mode.
Yeah.
And it kind of prevents us from thinking about what are actual solutions we can do in our day-to-day lives and in our local communities to help actually resist, this dictatorship or whatever you want to call it. So definitely first thing in the morning is not the most ideal time. And I've kind of gotten off the news for a while, and I actually have been thinking more about how I can volunteer in my local community and things like that.
Good idea.
Kind of the differentiator. Yep.
Ruth, don't go away. You said you're a longtime listener, right?
Yes, I am.
Who do we talk about every single day on the radio?
Trump.
Okay, I want you to know that I have argued many times.
You have.
Let's not talk about Trump. Let's talk about parenting issues. Let's talk about school issues. Let's talk about things that, when you're not here, that's what I have to sneak them in when Jim's not here.
No, I mean, that's not fair. I mean, especially for Ruth, first-time caller. When you say, let's talk about parenting things, I said, let's talk about what he said about Ivanka on Howard Stern.
Well,
you can always...
To be fair,
Go ahead, Ruth.
To be fair, I listen to you guys on my commute to work and home. Sometimes it's too much, and I turn the radio down.
Oh, Ruth.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Sometimes it's too much.
We get
I love it.
No, we get it.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Ruth. That is my point that I've been trying to make. Let's not.
Thanks for listening in your first call.
Make everybody miserable 2 minutes into the show.
By the way, we have a lot of variety in the in the show.
Yeah, okay.
Trump on education, Trump on healthcare, Trump as a parent, Trump as a Nobel Prize winner, Trump. No, we don't. We do.
You know,
we try to do all different things.
And isn't that annoying that he's done this to us all?
Yeah.
I mean, who could have thought this would all happen? And who could have thought, when you think about it, you can't go 24 hours without thinking about this guy.
No, you can't.
I mean, there are people out there who love him. I don't get it. But for a lot of us, it's like how he's like a brain worm, like RFK has in his head. Yeah. We have multiple Trump worms.
We do.
I probably have about 50.
You do.
Actually.
You do. One's coming out
and
your ear
orange.
right now.
They're
I see
orange.
It sneaking out there. 877-301-8970 is the number. We sort of got off the subject. The question is, the husband gets up at 6. As soon as the wife gets, and he's watching TV, he's doing doom scrolling, Trump-related stuff. He wants to share it with his wife. She wants a break, wants coffee. I think there's a middle ground, like that caller suggested. Give him a set period of time where he can get it out of his system.
Listen to this.
And then she can go relax.
This texter confesses, I am the a-hole husband, but my understanding wife has worked out that I will wait until past 9 o'clock before starting in on the horrible news. Okay, I like that.
There you go.
Peter in Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hi, thank you. Long time, first time.
Another one. Love that. Thank you.
Yes. This is really important. Our country, I agree with you, Jim. Our country is really in an unprecedented position, and we need to discuss this. I have so many people that I know who don't want to talk about it. And if we don't talk about it and we don't recognize it, we're going to have concentration camps and stuff, and everyone's going to go, how did we get here? But flood the zone is that's their agenda, is they're trying to get everybody so upset that nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody's willing to talk about it, and that gives them permission to do it. And that's so dangerous. So what I do is I do my research. I get very upset. I write my notes. I pick up the phone. I call both my senators and both my representatives.
I love this guy. Go ahead.
and I give them my bullet points as to why I think it's important, as to what I think they can do, and what they need to say on the floor of Congress so that we, the people, have this conversation and know what we can do to avoid disaster here in this country. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to do it. But to turn a blind eye and say, well, this is really upsetting, I don't want to talk about it, is going to be, then the sky will fall and on our heads, and we'll say, how did that happen? Or we won't even be able to talk about it because we'll be shut up. And
that was excellent.
We need to have that.
Okay.
You said it. I wish I had said what you said 20 minutes ago. That was excellent and totally on point, and I totally agree. Excellent first call from you, too. Thanks so much for making it.
Eva in central Massachusetts has a suggestion. We talked about how he floods the zone with all this stuff all the time. He and Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller and all these people that work for him. How about a drain the zone option? Or how about a class action suit by all the Americans that are in trauma because of this particular person? And also one last little text message. Jim thinking that waking people up at 6 o'clock in the morning to discuss the news, that is why Harriet Heinemann is in hiding. And if people don't know, Harriet Heinemann is Jim's shot putter girlfriend. 877-301-8970 is the number. Okay, that's the wrong thing. I'm sorry.
Here, this is an interesting programming idea. Listen to this. Anonymous texter, no Trump on Fridays. I would listen more. Think we could do a no Trump show? Have we ever, by the way, we attempted about a year or so ago. I totally forgot about this. I think we set out to do a no Trump show for all 3 hours, and I think one of us inadvertently failed by slipping it in there.
But how unusual is this? We've been doing talk radio for like more than 20 years now, right?
27 years.
So this never happened before in our previous career.
Well, the only thing close, I've said this before, we said in our former incarnation that we had talked about Sarah Palin some immense number of days. I don't know, it was like 80, 40. It pales next to this. Here's what I would propose. Maybe we don't have to decide on the air, but we'll discuss it with our team. How about we pick a day next week and we make an attempt, unless there's some catastrophe, that we do a whole non-Trump show.
A texter wants us to do a no Trump on Fridays.
I read that 2 seconds ago.
Did you read that one?
Were you there for that?
No, I was looking at other texts. Sorry about that.
Okay.
But some people are confused. They don't know if we're live or on tape. You know why?
Why?
Because between Trump and Harriet Heinemann,
we do the same thing.
I can never tell if we're live.
Thank you. That's a real caller, by the way.
In Dedham. That was a real caller. Yeah. I'm sorry. You did read the no Trump on Friday thing. Tomorrow is Friday, Jim. You going to be able to do it?
Well, I know. No, we're not doing it tomorrow. We're going to do it someday next week. You notice who's here?
Jared, you know what I'm talking about. Did you hear what we're talking about?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, that this poor woman gets up at 6 o'clock.
It's not a poor woman.
She is. She's doing the same by her husband.
Sand woman.
He's got the television blasting 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. She asks him to just wait till she's had her coffee before he blasts in the latest atrocity, and he won't do it. Now, what do you think?
Oh, I think he's almost with me.
Yeah, I am. You're asking the wrong person. We're journalists. This is what we do. How can you just completely ignore it?
Exactly.
I understand that. It's happening in the world.
Exactly.
Whether she wakes up or goes downstairs or not, it's happening.
If you're a partner in a relationship and not willing to be bludgeoned with Donald Trump 24 hours a day, what kind of relationship are you in? Well, I mean, really.
That's what it is, bludgeon. If
you and she could just take to your bed.
Just too
you
much.
missed it while you're on the air. They just announced it. Yeah, a very special edition of the Nobel Prizes.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, and Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump.
Yep.
Okay, what are you
what are you doing on the show there
you go.
Jared?
We have Jake Tapper on the show.
Whoa!
He's talking about his new book.
Which new book?
He is so prolific.
Which new book?
It's called Race Against Terror, and it's about this Al-Qaeda terrorist who
he just finished the Biden book, and now he's on to Race Against Terror?
In June, I think.
Just goes. But this guy surfaced out of nowhere, makes this confession, and then people basically, the U.S. District Attorney's Office or U.S. Attorney's Office had to race against time to be able to convict him, even though he had offered this confession. They needed to prove the crime actually happened. It's a very riveting.
Can you ask him? I mean, you always ask this when we have authors on. When do you write? Ask him when he does this. I mean, he's got 2 hours on television every day for which he. And I don't know this for a fact, but I would say what 20 different topics in 2 hours.
Yeah,
15 is a lot of preparation. Ask him when he does this and how he does this.
I will ask him. And
Thank you.
Yeah, I think he's one of those people who doesn't know how to stop. We know people like that.
You don't like it
From
when
Philadelphia.
people suggest us questions.
What?
You don't like it.
I love those questions. They're totally real.
You don't like it.
No, I like it when I ask them. That's why I don't like it when you ask them. That's what I meant. If that's what you meant, that is correct.
Okay.
Who else is on?
I'll insert my own make it stop here.
Okay.
Make it stop.
Matthew,
that was me doing her.
Matthew Schifrin is here. He founded Bricks for the Blind. He's a blind man who was not able to construct Legos and buildings and everything that Lego gives us to construct because they never had instructions for blind people. He changed that.
Oh, cool.
And then we'll speak to the co-owner and chef of Gustazo, the Cuban restaurant, Patricia Estorino, who is a James Beard Award semi-finalist nominated chef.
Fabulous.
Okay.
We'll be listening.
Thank you very much,
See you around,
Jared Bowen.
Jared.
You know what Jared's not doing?
Talking about Trump.
Talking about Trump.
Okay, let's
That's
see.
right.
Listen to the show. Let's see if he makes it.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you for
It's
listening to
our
another
new hero,
edition
Margaret
of Boston
Green.
Public Radio. That's right.
It is.
Boston Public Radio. I know, she's stepping out. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're live at the Boston Public Library. Jim said he was going to do a No Trump Friday. We'll
No,
see
I
if
did
that
not
happens.
say that. The listener did. I said we're going to try to pick a day next week and do a No Trump.
Sometime in December. Okay. We're going to be joined by the
How about never? Is never good for you? Greatest New
GBH
York
is Adam
magazine cartoon ever.
Press
Thank you.
Play. NBC 10 Boston Media Maker Sue Colin, Boston Medical Center Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, and Boston Baroque. They are great for Live Music Friday. I want to thank our crew.
By the way, Boston Baroque, for the first time ever, is going to sing about Trump. Do you know? This is a premium. Sorry, guys.
Okay. The Trump Tango. Zoe Matthews, Aidan Colin, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Mira Donaldson, Patrick Lally, John Claude Parker, Jenny Bologna. Stay tuned for the Culture Show with Jared Bowen, starting immediately after us on 89.7 GBH. Thanks much to our great staff today, because it wasn't easy with the phone thing, but they came through.
He is moving like a tremendous machine.
What secretary got to do this show? I'm Jim Browdy.
He voted for Trump.
Goodbye. See ya.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Porter Square Books, hosting Kanza Javed with What Remains After a Fire, a collection of short stories spanning